Story 1. How well I slept. The first thing I noticed was that I woke up on the wrong side. Not the wrong side, in the way people mean it. Cranky, off, out of sorts. I mean, I woke up physically on the other side of the bed. I have slept on the left side, the side by the window, for as long as I have owned this bed. My husband used to sleep on the right, back when I was a husband, and even after he left, I never drifted over to his side. You keep your half. Your body keeps its habits after the reason for them is gone. So when I opened my eyes that first morning and found myself lying on the right side of the mattress near the door with the pillow from the left tucked under my cheek as if I had carried it over in the night, I lay there a while and tried to make it make sense. It was a small thing. I want you to know I understood even then that it was a small thing. People move in their sleep. I told myself I had been restless. But I was not restless. I felt, if anything, more rested than I had in months. That was the part that should have bothered me, and instead it was the part I liked. I felt like I had slept the way you sleep as a child, the deep, dreamless kind where the whole night passes in a single blink, and you surface heavy and warm and reluctant, wanting nothing but to go back down. I had not slept like that in years. Since the divorce, honestly, my sleep had been a thin and broken thing. 3 hours here, an hour there, awake at 4 listening to the house tick. And then the quilt came, and I slept. Let me back up, because the quilt is the whole of it, and I want to tell it in order. My great-aunt Iris died in February. She was 91, and she died the way everyone hopes to, in her own bed, in her own house, in her sleep. That was how my mother put it on the phone. In her sleep, as if sleep were a room you could walk into and not come back from, which, I suppose, for Iris, it turned out to be. I had not seen her in probably 6 years. She lived up in the northern part of the state, in a farmhouse that had been in the family since before anyone could name, and she had gotten strange in her last decade, the way old women living alone are allowed to get strange. She kept the heat turned up to 80. She slept most of the day. When my mother visited, she said Iris was hard to wake in the afternoons, that she would find her under a mound of blankets at 2 in the afternoon with the shades drawn, and it would take 3 or 4 tries to bring her up. And even then, Iris would look at her like she had been called back from a long way off and was not entirely grateful for it. We none of us thought much of it. She was old. Old people sleep. When they cleared the house, my cousin Dana handled most of it, and she asked over text if I wanted anything of Iris's before it all went to the estate sale. I said no at first. I did not want to fill my house with a dead woman's furniture, but Dana sent a photo of a quilt, and something about it caught me. It was a wedding ring pattern, those interlocking circles, done in faded greens and creams and a dusty rose, and even in the phone photo you could tell it was old and hand-stitched and soft in the way that only very old cloth gets soft, worn down to something like skin. Dana said it had been on Iris's bed, that Iris had slept under it every night, that it was the one thing in the house Iris had actually seemed to care about. She said the ladies at the estate company wanted to price it high because the stitching was so fine. She said, "But I thought of you." "I don't know why I thought of you either," she texted. "It just seemed like yours." So I said yes. It arrived a week later in a box that smelled faintly of cedar, and something underneath the cedar, something I could not place, a warm, dry smell like the inside of an old hymn book. I washed it gently on the cold cycle and hung it to dry over the shower rod, and when it was dry, I put it on my bed because it was late and I was tired and it was there. That was the first night I slept the way I told you about, and the next morning I woke on the wrong side. Iris slept on the right side of her bed. I learned that later, near the door. I did not know it that first morning, but I woke up there. I am telling this in the order I understood it, which is not the order it happened, because at the time, each thing was just a thing. A woman moves in her sleep. A woman sleeps well under a soft old quilt. There is nothing in any of that. If you had told me that first week that I should be afraid of a blanket, I would have laughed at you, kindly, the way you laugh at someone who has read too many of the wrong kind of stories. It is a blanket. It is my great aunt's blanket, and it is beautiful, and I sleep like the dead under it. I actually said that to Dana on the phone. I sleep like the dead under it. I remember laughing when I said it. She laughed too. The second week, I started sleeping in. I have always been an early riser, not by virtue, but by the simple fact that my body woke me at 6, whether I wanted it or not. I work from home now, doing medical billing for a group of clinics, which means my hours are my own. But my mornings had always been mine too. Coffee at 6:30. The good, quiet, dark hours before the email started. That was the shape of my day. That was the shape that had kept me together, honestly, through the worst of the last 2 years. Having a shape. But that second week I began waking at 8. Then 8:30. I would set my alarm for 6 and wake to find I had turned it off in my sleep and slept through to 9. And the strange thing, the thing I keep coming back to, is that I never remembered turning it off. I would remember only the sleep itself, which was less like sleeping and more like being held underwater by something gentle, some warm, heavy hand that would not let me rise. And I did not want to rise. And that was fine. That was even good, because I woke feeling wonderful. I want to be clear about that. For those first 2 weeks, I felt wonderful. I felt like a person who had finally, after a long famine, been allowed to eat. The cold came in so slowly that I built 100 small reasons for it before I let myself see it whole. The first morning I noticed being cold, I blamed a furnace. It was March, still cold outside, and old houses lose their heat. I woke around 9 that morning, and my feet were like stones, my hands too, and the tip of my nose, and I lay there under the quilt where I was perfectly warm and did not want to put any part of me out into the room. That is a normal thing to feel on a March morning. So I told myself the furnace had cycled off, and I got up eventually and checked it, and it was running fine, and the thermostat said 68, and I thought, well, 68 feels different at 9 in the morning than it does at night, and I made my coffee and forgot about it. But it kept on. And it got worse in a particular way that I could not fold into the story about the furnace, which was this. The cold was in me and not in the room. I would wake shivering, actually shivering, my jaw tight, and I would get up and the room would be fine, the thermostat fine, and I would stand in a patch of sun coming through the kitchen window and not warm up for an hour. My hands would ache. My cousin Dana, when I mentioned it, said, maybe it was my thyroid, that hers had gone sluggish after 40 and left her cold all the time. And I said maybe, and I actually made an appointment, and I actually went, and my thyroid was fine. My blood was fine. The doctor, a nice young man who did not look at me while he talked, said I was a little anemic, nothing to worry about. Take some iron. He asked how I was sleeping, and I said, honestly, better than I have in years. And he smiled and said, well, hold on to that. Sleep is half of everything. Hold on to it. I did. God help me, I did. The dreams started in the 3rd week, and they were not like my dreams. My dreams have always been the ordinary garbage of the day. Anxiety in costume, the meeting I forgot, the house with the extra room, the teeth. Everyone has those. But these dreams were quiet, and they were somebody else's, and I knew it the way you know things in dreams without being told. In them, I was in a bedroom that was not mine. A farmhouse bedroom I understood later, though I had never been in Iris's bedroom in my life. Wallpaper with small faded flowers. A window with the shade pulled most of the way down and a thin band of gray winter light under it. A dresser with a doily and a hairbrush and a little dish of hairpins. And I was in the bed, under the quilt, my quilt, and I was very old, and I was very tired, and I was waiting for something. That was the whole of it, most nights. Waiting. There was a great tiredness in it, a tiredness that was almost sweet, the tiredness of the very end of a very long day when all the work is done and you are allowed at last to put your body down. In the dream, I would hear the house around me, the particular sounds of a house I did not know, a clock somewhere, the wind finding a gap in a storm window, the furnace kicking on with a soft thud from the cellar. and I would lie there under the weight of the quilt and feel that it was warm, warmer than it had any right to be, warm like another body, and I would think, in the dream, in a voice that was mine and was not mine, well, not long now, and I would feel glad about that. Not long now. I would wake from those dreams heavier than I went into them, and later than the day before. Here is the thing I have trouble explaining to people on the rare occasion I try. It was not frightening. Not at the time. The fear came later, and even the fear was a slow tide, not a wave. At the time, it was the opposite of frightening. It was the most comforted I have ever felt. Do you understand what it is to be a woman alone in a house at 39, divorced? Half your friends drifted off with the marriage. Your mother 2 states away and getting old herself. Your evenings, a long quiet slide from the work you do alone to the dinner you eat, alone to the television you fall asleep in front of, alone. Do you understand what it is to be tired all the way down, in a way sleep never touches, for 2 years, and then to be given, freely, a warmth that meets you, a weight that holds you, something in the house that wants you close? Because that is what it felt like. It felt like being wanted. It felt like the quilt was glad to have me under it, glad the way a thing can be glad, and I had not felt anything be glad to have me near it in a long time. I would come home in the evening from nowhere, from the grocery store, from a walk, and the bedroom would be dim and cool, and the quilt would be there on the bed with its faded rings, and I would feel it the way you feel, a person waiting up for you. And I would want to go to it. I began, some afternoons, to go to it. A minute would be 2 hours. It was always 2 hours. I would surface from those afternoon lyings, down with the light gone amber and low, the day mostly spent, and a note of panic somewhere far down under the warmth, too far down to reach, saying you have lost the afternoon again. And the warmth would fold gently over the panic and press it down, and I would think, it is all right. I will do it tomorrow, and I would not get up right away even then. I would lie there in the dusk a while longer, because leaving the quilt had started to feel like the hard part of the day. There was a morning in there, too, that I have not known where to put in the telling, so I will put it here. I woke at the counter, not in bed, standing at the kitchen counter in the gray early light with my hand flat on the cold formica and a mug of water in front of me that I did not remember pouring, and no memory at all of leaving the bed or walking down the hall or how long I had been standing there. I was very cold. The back door was unlocked, and I always lock the back door. It is the one habit 2 years alone had drilled into me hardest. Check the door. Check it twice. It was unlocked. Not open, just unlocked, the bolt drawn back, as if I had gone to it in the night and stood at it a while and thought about the yard, the dark yard, and then not gone out after all, and drifted to the counter for a glass of water I did not drink, and stood there cooling, until the light came up and something let me surface. I did not tell anyone about that morning. I locked the door and I got back under the quilt because I was so cold, and it was warm, and it took the cold, and the morning at the counter went soft and far away like the dreams did, like something that had happened to the old woman in the farmhouse and not to me at all. I told Dana some of this, the sleeping in, the cold, the deep good sleep, and I made it funny the way you do. Aunt Iris left me the world's most comfortable blanket, and now I can't get out of bed, I said. Dana laughed, but then she got quiet and she said something I did not expect. She said, "You know, that was how Iris got at the end." She said her mother, my great-aunt's sister, had told her that in Iris's last years you could not keep her out of that bed, that she slept the days away, that she got so she did not want to eat or go out or see anybody. She just wanted to be under her quilt, and she was cold all the time, and she got thin, and then one winter she just slept more and more until she slept the whole way through. Dana said it like it was sad, which it was, and then she said, half joking, "Maybe don't get too attached to that blanket." And she laughed. And I laughed. And I looked over at the bedroom door, and the quilt was in there in the dark, and I felt it hear us. That is a crazy thing to write. I felt it hear us, but that is what I felt. I want to tell you about the night I tried not to sleep under it, because that was the night I stopped being able to pretend. It had been about 5 weeks. I had lost weight I did not have to lose, and my face in the mirror had gone gaunt and gray around the eyes, and I had missed 2 deadlines for the clinics, actual deadlines, the kind that get you a phone call. And I had let 3 of my mother's calls go to voicemail because I was asleep when she called, at 2 in the afternoon, at 11 in the morning, asleep. I had begun to be afraid, not of the quilt, not yet, not out loud. I was afraid of myself, of the way I was disappearing into sleep, the way an addict is afraid of themselves, which is to say, afraid and also already planning the next time. So I decided, one night, that I would not use the quilt. I told myself I would fold it up and put it in the closet and sleep under my regular blanket like a regular person and wake up at 6 like I used to and get my life back. And it would prove that the quilt was just a blanket and I was just tired and everything had a reason. I folded it up. My hands did not want to. I mean that as plainly as I can say it. My hands were slow and heavy and reluctant. Folding that quilt, the way your hands are reluctant to let go of something warm, and when I had it folded and I carried it to the closet across the hall, I felt, physically, a pull backward, a resistance, like walking into wind. I put it on the closet shelf and shut the door. And then I stood in the hallway a while, and I was cold, and I went and got under my regular blanket in my regular bed, on the left side, the window side, my old side, and I turned off the light. I did not sleep. I want to be careful and honest about this because it matters. It was not that I lay awake worrying, it was that I could not go down. My body was exhausted, wrung out, desperate for sleep, and sleep would not come, the way it had not come for those 2 bad years, and I lay there in the dark on my old side of the bed, and I was cold, colder than the room, cold from the inside, and I could feel the closet across the hall. I could feel it the way you feel. A phone you were trying not to check. The quilt was in there, folded on the shelf in the dark, and it was warm, and I was not. And every cell of me knew the 2 facts and wanted to put them together. Come and be warm. That was not a voice. I want to be clear that I never once heard a voice, not in the whole of it, nothing so simple or so mad as a voice. It was a knowing, a pull. Come and be warm. You are so tired. You have been tired for 2 years. It is right there. It is glad to have you. Why are you lying here cold and awake like a fool, when warmth is right across the hall, warmth that wants you? When have you ever in your life had warmth that wanted you? I lasted maybe 2 hours. Then I got up, and I crossed the hall, and I opened the closet, and I took the quilt down off the shelf, and I want to tell you I did it grimly, defeated, ashamed. I did not. I did it the way you go to someone you love and have been fighting with and have finally given up fighting. There was relief in it. There was a warmth that started before the quilt even touched me, the moment my hands closed on it. And I carried it back to the bed and I lay down and I pulled it over me. And it was warm, immediately, impossibly warm, the way it had been that first night. And I sank and I thought, with the last clear thought I had for a good while, oh, there you are. I slept 14 hours. When I woke, it was dark again, evening again. I had slept through a whole day, and I was on the right side of the bed with the pillow carried over, and I was cold, and I did not care, and I lay there in the dark and did not get up. And part of me, some small drowning swimmer of me, understood at last that this was how it went. This was how Iris went, more and more, until the whole way through. Understanding it did not make me get up. I did learn things in the clearer hours, because there were still clearer hours then, mostly in the mornings before the pull got strong. And in those hours, I did what a frightened person does now, which is I looked things up and I made calls. I called Dana and I asked her, straight out, to tell me everything she knew about the quilt, where it came from, how old it was. She did not know much, but she knew this. It had come down through Iris from Iris's mother. And before that, family said, from a woman who was not blood, an old woman who had boarded with the family a long time ago. Back in the 20s, back on that same farm. Dana said the story, the way she'd heard it as a girl, was that this old boarder had made the quilt over one long winter when she was dying, sat up in bed and pieced it and stitched it all that last winter of her life, and gave it to Iris's mother, who had nursed her, as a thank you. Dana said her own mother used to say the quilt was unlucky, that the women who slept under it slept too well, and she said it like a family joke, the kind of thing an old relative says that everyone rolls their eyes at. Slept too well. She laughed when she said it. I did not laugh that time. I could not. I turned the quilt inside out one morning and I looked at the stitching. Really looked at it in good light with my reading glasses, the way I had never bothered to. It was fine work, unbelievably fine, tiny even stitches by the thousand. And along one border, worked into the pattern so you would never see it unless you were looking, there were words. Not embroidered like a sampler, stitched small into the quilting itself, the thread only a shade off from the cloth, so that they were more a texture than a text, and you had to tilt them to the light and run your thumb over them to read them at all. I read them with my thumb in the morning light, my heart going. They said, "Rest now." They said, "You have carried enough." They said, "Let me have the cold for you." I put it down. I sat on the edge of the bed with my hands in my lap, and I did not touch it for a while. "Let me have the cold for you." I understood it then, or I understood as much as I was going to. That old woman, dying that long winter, cold all the way down the way the dying get cold, cold in a way no blanket reaches, had sat up night after night and stitched her tiredness into the cloth, stitched the wanting into it. Not a curse, I don't think. I don't think it was ever meant as a cruelty. I think it was meant, if it was meant as anything, as a gift, the way the words say. Rest now. You have carried enough. I think she made a thing that would take the cold off the next tired woman, and the next take it and take it. And she did not understand, or did not let herself understand, or did not care by the end, that a warmth like that has to come from somewhere, that to take the cold off of you, it has to put the cold onto someone. That the rest it gives you is somebody else's rest, borrowed, and rest that deep, rest that takes your mornings, and then your afternoons, and then your days. That is not rest at all. That is the other thing. The thing rest is a picture of. Iris slept under it for 60 years, and it took her slowly, an old woman with nothing much left to lose to it. A few decades traded a little at a time so gently, she probably called it comfort her whole life, and was not wrong. It is hungrier with me. It has been finding that out night by night how much more there is to take from a woman with mornings still in her. And it has been taking, and I have been letting it, because, and here's the part I cannot make anyone understand, because it feels like being loved. That is the trap of it. I keep circling back to that because it is the whole truth of the thing. If it hurt, I would have thrown it out the first week. If a voice had spoken, if a cold hand had reached out, if there had been anything to be afraid of in the ordinary way, I would have run and I would have been fine. But there is nothing to run from. There is only the warmest, kindest, most patient welcome I have ever been given, waiting for me every night on my own bed, in my own quiet house, glad to have me. And I am so tired. You have to have been as tired as I have been to know how little you can refuse a thing like that. Dana came at the end of the 6th week. My mother had called her, worried, because I had stopped answering, and Dana drove the 2 hours and let herself in with the key I had given her years ago and found me asleep at 4 in the afternoon under the quilt with the shades drawn. And she said later it took her a long time to wake me, 4 or 5 tries, and that when I finally came up I looked at her like she had called me back from a long way off, and I was not grateful for it. She said I was so cold to the touch it scared her. She said the room was warm, but I was cold. She said I had lost so much weight she almost did not know me. She sat on the edge of the bed and she cried and she asked me what was happening, and I tried to tell her, and it came out wrong. It came out like the ravings of a sick woman, a blanket, the cold, the words and the stitching, and I watched her decide, gently, that I was depressed, that I was not eating, that I had let myself go alone in this house the way people do, and that she was going to fix it. She is a good woman. She wanted to help in the ways there are to help. She tried to take the quilt. She said, "Let's just get this old thing off the bed. It smells like the closet." Let me put it in my car and take it to the cleaners. And she took hold of it, and I heard myself make a sound I did not know I could make. And I took hold of it too. And we had a moment there, the two of us, a grown woman on each side of a dead woman's quilt, pulling, and the look on Dana's face. I will not forget the look on Dana's face. She let go. She said, "Okay, okay." She said it soft, the way you talk to someone on a ledge. And I saw in her eyes that she had understood the one thing she needed to understand, which was that the quilt was not the sickness to me. The quilt was the only thing keeping me warm, and you cannot take the only warm thing off of a cold and drowning person by force. They will fight you. I fought her. Over a blanket, I fought my own cousin who had driven 2 hours to save my life. She stayed 3 days. She cooked for me, and she made me eat. And she took the shades up and let the light in, and she talked to me, and it helped, a little, in the daylight, with another human voice in the house. I slept less those 3 days. The Po is weaker when you are not alone, I found. It is a thing for the alone. It knows the alone. When Dana was in the house being warm and loud and ordinary, the quilt was just a blanket, and I could see, in flashes, how far I had gone, and I was afraid the right way, the sharp, clean, useful way, and I asked her, "On the second night, please take it when you go. Please just take it and burn it and don't tell me where." And she said she would. And I meant it. I want that on the record. There was a night I meant it all the way through. But she had to go home. She has her own life, her own kids, her own 2 years of tiredness for all I know. And the morning she left, she did not take the quilt. Because I had spent the last night talking her out of it, and I do not fully remember doing it, but I know I did, because I know what I am now. I know I would have been sweet and reasonable about it in the dark. I would have said I was better, that she had helped so much, that I saw now it was just grief and being alone, that of course I would keep eating and keep the shades up and call my mother, and that it would be silly to burn a beautiful heirloom, a fine old quilt worth real money, over a bad few weeks. I would have said all of that in a warm and reasonable voice, my own voice, and I would have half meant it, and the other half of me, the half that is not entirely mine anymore, would have been lying there warm and glad and patient, letting me talk, knowing she would leave, knowing I would be alone again by evening. She left at 10 in the morning. By noon, I was cold. By 1, I had lain down, just for a minute. It is always just for a minute. That was some days ago. I am not sure how many. The mail has stopped mattering, and the mail was how I used to count days, so I have lost the thread of them. I get up less. I have stopped setting the alarm. There is nothing to be up for that is louder than the wanting to be down. I eat when I surface and it is light, standing at the counter, whatever is quick, and then the wanting takes me again, and I go back to the bedroom where it is dim and cool, and the quilt is warm, and I lie down on the right side, Iris's side, then near the door side, and I pull it over me, and it meets me the way it always meets me, glad, warm, so warm, and I go down. The dreams are almost all I have now. I am the old woman in the farmhouse most of the time now, waiting, glad to wait, and it is sweet. I told you it was sweet. The tiredness at the end of the long day when the work is done. I do not know anymore, when I wake, which bits are mine. There is a farmhouse in me that I never saw. There is a winter in me that ended before I was born. I know how the wind found the storm windows in a house 200 miles from here. I did not used to know that. I am writing this in a morning, one of the last clear ones I think I will get, because I can feel that the clear mornings are ending, the way you can feel the end of a season a few days before the calendar says it. Soon there will not be a morning I come far enough up to hold a pen. I am not writing it to be saved. I want to be honest about that, because if I pretended I wanted saving, you might waste your worry on me, and it is too late for me, and I have made my peace with too late, or the quilt has made it for me, and I can no longer tell the difference, and that not being able to tell is itself the last of it going. I am writing it for whoever gets the quilt after me, because it will not burn with me. Things like this do not. It will go to the estate people, or to a cousin who thought of you. It just seemed like yours, and it will come in a box that smells of cedar and something warmer underneath, and it will be beautiful, and you will be tired, and you will put it on your bed, because it is late, and you are tired, and it is there. And the first night you will sleep the way you slept as a child, and you will wake heavy and warm and grateful, and you will wake, maybe, on the wrong side of your own bed. If you do, get up. I know you will not want to. I know the wanting. I know it better now than I know my own name, which I have to think about now to be sure of. I know that everything in you, and a little bit of something that is not you, will tell you to lie back down, that you are so tired, that you have carried enough, that here at last is a warmth that wants you. Get up anyway. Be cold. Be cold and awake and alone, and get up and take the quilt to the yard and burn it in the morning light while you are still strong enough to be the one deciding, because there is a window, a few weeks maybe, while you can still tell your own tiredness from its wanting, and after that the window closes softly, the way everything about it is soft, and you will not be afraid anymore, and not being afraid will feel like peace, and it will not be peace. It let me have these clear mornings. I have wondered why. I think, and this is the closest I can get, I think it is not cruel, and it is not kind. It is only tired. Tired. The way that old dying woman was tired 100 years ago, and it wants what she wanted, which is rest, real rest, the whole way through, and it cannot get there. It can only take the cold off itself and put it onto the next warm, tired woman, and doze in her warmth a while, and take, and never once get all the way to the rest. It is stitched full of wanting. So it lets me write. Maybe it likes being understood. Maybe after 100 years of being called comfort, it is glad, in whatever way it can be glad, that one woman felt what it really was before she went down. I felt you. I want to tell it. Lying here, I want to tell it. I felt you. I know what you are. You are not warmth. You are the cold wearing warmth like a quilt. And I am letting you have me anyway, because I am so tired, and being tired is the whole of it. Being tired is the door it comes in through, and mine has been standing open for 2 years. The light is getting long in the window. That is how I know I have been writing a while, and how I know the wanting is close, because the long amber light is when it comes for me. The end of day light, the light in the farmhouse dream. My hands are cold. My feet are stones. The bedroom is down the hall, and it is dim and cool, and the quilt is on the bed with its faded rings of green and cream and dusty rose, and it is warm. I can feel from here that it is warm, and it is glad. I can feel from here that it is glad, and I am going to go to it now. I have known for the last little while that I was going to. I have just been putting words down first, for you, because it is the last useful thing I have, and because it lets me stay upright a few minutes longer in the cooling light, a few minutes longer as myself, before I go and lie down on Iris's side of the bed, and pull the cold up over me like a warmth, and let it have the rest of my mornings, one by one, gently, the way it has had all the others. Rest now, the stitches say. You have carried enough. Let me have the cold for you. I am so tired. You would have to have been as tired as I am to understand how kind it sounds. How much it sounds at the very end of a long day in a quiet house where nothing else has wanted you in years, like being loved. I am going to go lie down now. Just for a minute. It is always just for a minute. Story 2. In my own hand. I have kept lists my whole life. My mother kept them, and her mother kept them, on the backs of envelopes and on the little pads that came free from the pharmacy. And I grew up thinking a woman who did not write things down was a woman who intended to forget them. So you should know, before I tell you the rest, that a note in my handwriting on my kitchen counter is the most ordinary thing in my world. It is not a haunted object. It is not a strange discovery. It is Tuesday. It is the smell of coffee. It is my own hand, which I have watched make the same loops and the same hard little crosses on my T's for nearly 40 years, doing the thing it has always done. That is what made it slow. That is what let it in. I live alone. I want to be clear about that from the start, because it matters to everything that comes after. My husband and I split 4 years ago, and it was not traumatic. It was just over. The way a battery is just over, and he took the good couch and the dog we did not have children to fight about, and I kept the house. It is a small house on a street of small houses, 1 story, built in the 50s with a kitchen that gets the morning light and a back door that sticks in the summer. There is no one else here. No roommate, no boyfriend who lets himself in, no cleaner with a key. My sister has a key, but she lives 2 states over, and she has not used it since she helped me move the good couch's replacement in. When I lock the door at night, the house holds exactly 1 person. Me. I have never been afraid of that. I liked it, if you want the truth. I liked knowing that anything out of place was mine, that any dish in the sink was a dish I had used, that the whole small machine of the house ran on me and no one else. So the first list did not frighten me. It confused me for about the length of time it takes to pour a cup of coffee, and then I forgot it. It was on the counter by the toaster, on the magnetic pad I keep on the fridge, the top sheet torn off and set down flat where I would see it. My handwriting. Not close to my handwriting, not a decent forgery of it. Mine. The little cross on the T, the way I read a lowercase a like a printed one, a habit a teacher tried to break me of when I was 9. It said, pork shoulder, lard, long matches, twine, the soft kind. And then under that, a little apart it said, before the neighbor's light. I read it twice. I am a vegetarian. I have been since I was 26. Not loudly, not in a way I make other people accommodate, but completely. I do not buy pork shoulder. I would not know a good one from a bad one. I have no fireplace and no grill and no reason on this earth to own long matches, and I could not have told you what lard even looked like out of the tub. I stood there in the morning light with my coffee going cold in my other hand, and I thought, with the flat calm of a person who has not yet understood that anything is wrong, that I must have written down someone else's list, that my sister had called and read me her shopping, or that I had copied something off a recipe I was thinking of making for the block thing in the fall. That last one did not hold up, because I do not make pork for the block thing, but the mind is generous with itself early on. It offers you doors. It says, here, walk through this one. It is more comfortable in there. I put the list in the junk drawer because I did not want to throw away paper with my handwriting on it, which is a thing my mother could not do either. And I went to work and I did not think about it again for 9 days. I want to walk you through the 9 days because they are the shape of the whole thing in miniature. Nothing happened in them. That is the point. I went to work. I came home. I made my small, careful dinners. I watched the shows I watch. I slept my ordinary sleep. And if you had asked me on any of those 9 evenings whether anything in my life was wrong, I would have said no and meant it. I would have told you I was tired. I was always a little tired that year. I had taken on more accounts at the firm, and the new software was fighting me. And I was in that stretch of a woman's life where sleep starts to feel less like rest and more like a thing you clock into and out of, arriving unrefreshed. But wrong? No. 9 days of no. The second list was in the bathroom, folded once, tucked into the frame of the mirror, at the exact height where I would see it when I straightened up from spitting out my toothpaste. Same pad. I recognized the little printed watermark of the pharmacy through the paper before I even opened it, and my stomach did a thing then that it had not done the first time, a small drop, because I knew, opening it, that it would be my hand again. And it was. It said 4012, and then it said Odell, and then it said, she keeps the window open. Don't close it for her. I did not know anyone named Odell. I turned that over for a long time, standing at the sink with the folded paper, trying to make it be a client, a name from work. a character from something I had watched half of and fallen asleep to. Nothing. It was not a name in my life, and 4012 meant nothing either, except that it was a time, and it was a time in the range of times when I am asleep. And the third line was the one I kept coming back to, because it was not a note to myself the way a grocery list is a note to myself. It was a note to myself about a third person. She keeps the window open. Don't close it for her. As though I had been in a room with a woman I do not know, at 12 minutes past 4 in the morning, and had needed to remind myself of her preferences. Here is what I did. And I tell you this so you understand that I am not a person who leans toward the strange. I made a doctor's appointment. I sat in the waiting room with a magazine I did not read, and when the doctor came in, I told her, in the flattest and most reasonable voice I own, that I thought I might be writing things in my sleep. She was kind about it. She asked whether I drank, and I told her the truth. 1 glass of wine most nights, less than that really. She asked about the pills I take to sleep, and I told her I do not take pills to sleep. I have never taken a pill to sleep in my life. She asked whether I had been under stress, and I almost laughed, because who among us is not? And I said, the ordinary amount. She wrote me a referral to a sleep clinic, and she said the word parasomnia, and she explained it, and it was such a relief to have a word for it that I nearly cried in the parking lot. Parasomnia. A part of you that does things while the rest of you sleeps? Sleepwalking has a cousin, it turns out, and its name is sleep writing, and people do it. People get up and cook full meals and drive cars and hold conversations and remember none of it, and their loved ones learn to steer them gently back to bed. There is a whole literature. I read it all that week. I read it the way a drowning person reads a rope. Because if it had a name, it was a thing that happened to a body, and my body was doing it, and a body can be treated. That was the frame I built, and I lived inside it for a good while. And I want to be fair and say that the frame was probably even true, as far as it went. I do think, still, some part of me was getting up in the dark. The mud proves it later. The frame was not wrong. It was just too small. It explained the hand, and it did not explain what the hand was writing, and I let the one explanation stand in for the other because it let me sleep. We do that. We take the fact we can bear, and we let it hold the door shut on the fact we can't. The sleep clinic could not see me for 6 weeks, so I did what my mother's daughter would do. I started keeping records. I bought a new pad, a fresh one, and I counted its pages, and I wrote the count on the cardboard back, and I set it in the exact center of the kitchen counter each night before bed, square to the edge, with a pen laid across it at a right angle. I took a photograph of it on my phone every night. If I was getting up and writing, I would catch it. I would have the before and the after. I would have the evidence I could take to the clinic, and more than that, I would have the thing I needed most, which was to see it, to hold it up in the daylight and say, there, that is all it is. A hand and a habit and a tired brain. Nothing in the house but me. The first night I did this, nothing happened. The pad was square in the morning, the pen at its right angle, the page count unchanged, the photograph identical to the one I had taken 12 hours before. I felt foolish, and I felt wonderful. I began to believe the mirror note and the toaster note had been a fluke, a bad patch, a couple of nights of a stressed woman doing a strange stressed thing that had passed the way a fever passes. On the 4th morning, the pen was on the floor. Just the pen. The pad was square. The page count was right. I counted twice, 3 times. I counted them against the number on the cardboard. Nothing written, but the pen was on the floor, a foot from the counter, and I had laid it at a right angle across the top of the pad the night before. I had photographed it there, and in the morning it was on the linoleum, and there is no one in the house but me. I stood over it for a while. I did not pick it up right away. I remember thinking very clearly in a voice that was trying hard to stay reasonable, that a pen can roll, that a house settles, that a truck on the street can shake a thing off a counter, given the right nudge, given time. All of that is true. Pens do roll. But I had laid it flat, across the pad, not near an edge, and a flat pen at rest does not decide to travel a foot in the night on its own. And I knew that. And I picked it up and I put it back, and I did not sleep well. The fifth morning there was writing. It was not on the pad. That is the thing I want you to sit with, because it is the thing that broke my careful little system in half. The pad was square. The pad was untouched, blank, its page count exact. The writing was on the inside of a kitchen cabinet door, the one over the coffee maker, the one I opened first thing every single morning of my life. And it was in pencil, and it was my hand, and it said, "You're counting the pages. Good. It isn't in the pages." I did not open the cabinet that morning for a long time. I stood in my kitchen in the gray light with the coffee maker gurgling, and I looked at those words, and I understood, in a way I had been keeping myself from understanding for weeks, that the frame was too small. Parasomnia does not read your countermeasures. A tired brain that gets up and writes grocery lists does not notice that you have started counting pages, and then choose a surface you did not think to guard and leave you a note about the counting. That is something watching me do my careful, reasonable things and finding them funny. "Good," it said. Like a parent to a child who has done a small, clever thing that does not matter. I painted over it. I want you to know that too. I went to the hardware store that same day and I bought a little can of white, and I painted over the inside of that cabinet door, 2 coats, and I felt better with each stroke. The way you feel better cleaning a wound, even though the cleaning is not the healing. And that night, I did not set out the pad. I decided I was done inviting it. I decided that if I gave it no paper and no pen and no square little target on the counter, it would have nothing to say, and I would starve it out of my house. You already know this did not work. It found paper. There is always paper in a house. There are the backs of receipts and the margins of the mail and the inside covers of the paperbacks by my bed and the little pads by the phone. And there is the pad on the fridge that I forgot to hide. And it used all of them, over the weeks that followed, in my hand, in whatever it could find to write with, pencil, pen. Once a stub of eyeliner on the bathroom tile that I scrubbed on my knees at 6 in the morning while I was already late for work. Let me tell you what the notes said, because the shape of them is the whole story, and I have thought about the shape of them more than I have thought about anything else in my life. At the beginning, they were lists. Groceries I would not buy. The pork shoulder, the lard, the long matches, and then, as the weeks went, stranger and more particular things. Rope, the soft kind, and it always said the soft kind, always. As though softness mattered. As though there was someone the roughness would hurt. Children's chewable vitamins, the pink ones. Dried lavender, a lot of it. More than a person puts in a drawer, enough to fill a room. I have no children. I have never had children. Reading that line, children's chewable, the pink ones, in my own hand, on the back of my own electric bill, in a house that has never held a child, is a specific kind of cold that I do not have a better word for than cold. Then the times came back and stayed. 4012, always around. Then 4008, 4015, a window between 3 and 4:30 when, the notes seemed to say, things happened when I was somewhere, doing something, being useful to someone. The neighbor across the way, an older man, gets up at 4:45 and his kitchen light comes on, and it throws a yellow square onto my bedroom ceiling. The notes knew that. The notes used it as a clock. Do it before the neighbor's light. Be back before the neighbor's light, as though there were a shift, and I worked it, and I had to be clocked out and in my bed with my eyes shut before the old man across the street stood up in his kitchen and the day began. Then the name grew a life. Odell. She keeps the window open. She likes the third stair, not the second. Take the third. She doesn't like it when you hum. She says thank you now. She didn't used to. Small domestic notes about a woman named Odell, the kind of notes you keep about a person you care for, an elderly relative, a difficult tenant, a patient. and I have no Odell. There is no Odell. There is no Odell in my life, in my family, in my work, in my street. I looked. I am telling you I looked. I searched the name against every account at the firm, and it was not there. I asked my sister gently whether it was a family name I had forgotten, someone from her grandmother's side, and she said no. She had never heard it, and she asked me why, and I said no reason, a crossword, and I have never lied to my sister before, and I do not know why I did then, except that some part of me had already decided Odell was mine and did not want to share her. And then the notes turned. This is the part I have the most trouble with, because there is no line I can point to and say, here, this is where the records became instructions. It happened the way dusk happens. One night, I would find a note that was a record, a thing that had already been done. Past tense, she ate tonight. She was quiet. The window is open. And a few nights later, I would find a note that was not past tense at all. It was future. It was a thing to do. Bring her the pink ones tomorrow. Don't let the light in on her. When she asks, tell her soon. When she asks. As though I would be speaking with her, as though the hours I could not account for were not empty at all, but full. Full of a room I do not have, and a woman I have never met, and a kind of work I do not remember choosing. And the notes were not a symptom of a sleeping brain, but the handoff between two shifts of the same person, one of whom sleeps in my bed in the daytime of her life, and one of whom is awake and busy and thorough and writes everything down, because that is what the women in my family do. They write it down so they will not forget, and she does not want me to forget. I went to the sleep clinic. I want to finish that thread honestly. 6 weeks came and I went, and they wired me up in a beige room, and I slept, or half slept, the way you do with a stranger watching your brain draw its lines. And in the morning, a doctor with tired, kind eyes told me that I did have a disorder, that I did surface out of deep sleep in a way that was not restful and not fully waking, that there was a name for it and a medication that might help and habits I could build. A dark, quiet room, a cool room, no wine, a locked door with the key hidden from myself. He was a good doctor. He was right, I think, about the machinery of it. And I sat there, and I almost told him about Odell, about the window, about the soft rope and the pink vitamins and the note that said good when I started counting the pages. And I did not, because I understood, sitting in that chair with the fluorescent light humming, that if I said those things out loud in that room, they would treat the wrong illness. They would treat the sleep. And the sleep was not the thing. The sleep was only the door the thing came through. I took the prescription. I filled it. I still have the bottle. I have not taken very many of them, and I will tell you why in a moment. And I'm not proud of the why. Because here is what happened when I locked the door and hid the key. I bought a key deadbolt for the inside of my own bedroom, which is a thing you can do, and I locked myself in at night, and I put the key in a jar of dry beans in the kitchen on the far side of the house, so that a sleeping woman would have to walk the length of the house and dig through beans in the dark to free herself. And surely the noise of it, the absurd rattling labor of it, would wake me, or wake enough of me to stop it. That was the plan. It was a good plan. It was the plan of a reasonable woman. The first morning, the bedroom door was locked from the inside, exactly as I had left it, the deadbolt thrown, the little brass ton of it fast in the frame, and the key was in the lock. On the inside, in the bedroom, with me. Not in the bean jar in the kitchen where I had buried it. I had put it in the beans. I had felt the beans close cold over my hand, and in the morning, it was in the lock on my side of the door, and the door was still bolted, so I had gone and gotten it and come back and locked myself in again. Or something had. Some patient, careful part of me that did not want the door open any more than I did, that wanted, if anything, to keep the rest of the house out of that room while it worked, and had simply gone and retrieved the key like a woman fetching a thing she needs from another room, and had walked back through the beans and the dark and thrown the bolt and set the key where the morning would find it, and gone on with the night. I found the note that day in the pocket of my robe. It said, "You keep taking the key away. I keep needing it. Let's not do this to each other. Let's not do this to each other. Not to myself, to each other." That was the first time I used the word us, and I sat down on the edge of my bed with the robe in my lap, and I did not paint over anything, and I did not call anyone, and I did not throw the note in the junk drawer with the others. I read it maybe 40 times. Let's not do this to each other. There is a terrible intimacy in it. It is the sentence of a marriage. It is what you say to the person you are yoked to for life, the person whose habits you cannot escape because they are your habits, the person who is in the bed with you no matter how you rearrange the pillows. I had spent 4 years learning to live alone, learning to like it, learning to say to myself with pride that anything out of place in this house was mine. And it was. That was the whole horror of it if you want it in one line, and I have had a long time to find the one line. Everything out of place in this house is mine. The pork shoulder is mine. The soft rope is mine. Odell is mine. The hand is mine. There is no one else here. There has never been anyone else here. I lock the door on exactly one person every night, and I was right. And that is the thing I cannot get out from under. The mud came in the fall. I've been putting off the mud because it is the piece of it that a doctor cannot have. A note in your own hand, a doctor can have. A sleep disorder can write. But one morning in October, I came down and the back door, the one that sticks in summer, was standing open, swollen shut all June and July, and now, in the cool, loose enough to open, and it stood open into a gray, wet yard, and there were prints on the kitchen floor. My prints, my bare feet, the shape of them unmistakable, the narrow heel, the toes, in mud, coming in from the yard, 6 or 7 steps into the kitchen, and then nothing, as though I had walked in from the wet grass and stood in the middle of my own kitchen at some hour I could not account for, and then wiped my feet, or floated, or simply stopped leaving a trace. The mud was cold when I touched it. I had been outside, in the dark, in the wet, barefoot, in the range of hours the notes had claimed all along, and I had come back in, and I did not carry with me one single image of the yard at night, not the cold of the grass, not the smell of the wet, nothing. A clean, erased span of hours with only the mud to say I had spent them somewhere that was not my bed. There was a note by the sink that morning. It said, "Don't be scared of the mud. You always come home." And then, lower, in a smaller hand, my smaller hand, the one I use when I am trying to fit a lot into a corner, "She can't come as far as the house yet. That's why we go to her." We go to her. So there was a place, out past the wet yard, in the hours I lose, where a woman named Odell keeps a window open and likes the third stair and has learned to say thank you. And I go to her, in the night, barefoot, and I bring her the pink ones, and I do not hum because she does not like it, and I come home before the neighbor's light. And I write it all down so that the daytime woman, the one who keeps lists and pays the electric bill, and sat so reasonably in the doctor's beige room, will know what has been done, and what still needs doing, and will not, in her foolish daylight fear, undo the work by locking a door or hiding a key or painting over a cabinet. The notes were never a symptom. I understand it now, the way you understand a thing at 4 in the morning, which is completely and uselessly. The notes were a handover, one of me leaving instructions for the other, and I had been reading them as a patient reads her own chart, when all along they were written the way a mother writes a list for the babysitter, warm and certain and a little impatient, because the mother is coming back. The mother always comes back, and the babysitter only needs to not ruin anything while she's gone. There were the items too. I have not told you about the items yet, because they are harder to say than the notes, and I have been circling them the way you circle a cold room before you go in. The notes I could almost keep at the level of words, and words can be a symptom. Words can be a sickness of the mind, and a sickness of the mind is a thing that stays inside a person. But one afternoon in the fall, I went into the garage for the leaf rake, and on the shelf where I keep the things I use twice a year, next to the rake and the bag of salt for the walk, there was a brown paper grocery sack that I had not put there. I know I had not put there because I do not shop the way that sack was packed. Inside it, folded neatly, was a coil of rope, cotton, soft, exactly as soft as a note had asked for. There was a brown tarp, still creased from the store. There was a plastic tub of lard and a box of long fireplace matches, and, at the bottom, in a little paper pharmacy bag, a bottle of children's chewable vitamins, the pink ones, the seal not yet broken. Everything the earliest lists had asked for, bought, carried home, folded away on my own shelf by my own hands, waiting. I stood in the cold garage with the rake forgotten in my hand, and I understood that the daytime and the nighttime were not two separate weathers in one head. They were one continuous life. She shopped. She paid. She carried. The lists were not a fever writing nonsense. They were a woman getting her errands done, and I was the errand she was quietest about. I found the receipt a week later, and the receipt is the thing I would show a doctor if I ever decided to be brave enough to be disbelieved. It was in my coat pocket, the good wool coat I wear when it turns cold, and it was from the grocery on the highway, the one open all night, and it listed the pork shoulder and the lard and the long matches and the twine. And the twine on the receipt said, in the store's own clipped inventory language, cotton cord soft, and the timestamp at the bottom said 3005 in the morning on a Tuesday, and it said the transaction was paid in cash, except that the week before I had taken $60 out of the machine at the bank for the man who does the gutters and paid him $40, and the $20 had been in my wallet, and it was not in my wallet anymore. So I had driven, in the night, in the hours I lose, to a store on the highway and walked its bright aisles under its fluorescent light, where there are cameras, where there is a person at the register who saw my face and rang me up and said, "Have a good night." And I had paid with the change from the gutter man and driven home before the neighbor's light, and I remember none of it, and the paper is real, and it is in the junk drawer now with all the notes, and some nights I take it out and hold it just to feel that it does not dissolve. My sister called around Thanksgiving, and that is its own small piece I have to set down. We talk on Sundays, but she called on a Thursday, which is not our day, and she was quiet in a way that is not like her. And after a while she said, in a careful voice, that she had not wanted to bring it up, but it had been bothering her. And did I remember calling her a few weeks back, late, very late? I said no. I said I would never call her at a bad hour. I know she gets up early. And she was quiet again, and then she said, that was the thing, that it had been almost 4 in the morning. Her time, which is almost 4 mine, we are in the same band of the country, and that she had answered because she was frightened by the hour, and that it had been me, my number, my voice, but that I had not talked the way I talk. She said I was calm. She said I asked her, very gently, whether their guest room window opened all the way, whether it stuck, and whether she kept it open at night, and that when she said she didn't understand, I had said, never mind, I'm just making sure everything's ready, go back to sleep, and hung up. She laughed a little when she finished, the way you laugh to make a thing smaller, and she asked if I had been sleepwalking again like when we were kids, and I said yes, probably. That's probably all it was. And I got off the phone before my voice could do anything it shouldn't. I had never told her I sleepwalked as a child. I did not know that I had, but she remembered it, and so it is true. And it means this is not new. It means there has always been an hour of my life that gets up and walks and asks careful questions about whether the window opens, and it has only now, in this quiet house, with no one to steer me back to bed, gotten the room to itself. I stopped fighting it around then. I am not proud of this. I told you. I would tell you why I stopped taking the pills, and this is the why. The pills made the sleep deeper, and a deeper sleep did not stop the work. It only made the daytime woman, the one telling you this, less able to catch the edges of it, less able to wake in time, to find the key in the lock, or the mud on the floor. On the pills, I woke with nothing. No evidence, clean hours, a made bed, and the notes when I found them were serene, were pleased. Thank you for resting. It's easier when you rest, and I understood that resting was cooperating, that the more soundly the daytime woman slept, the more freely the nighttime one could move, and so I stopped taking them, and I lie awake now as much as I can, on purpose, a small resistance, the only one I have left, staying up like a sentry against myself, knowing that I cannot stay up forever, that sleep is not a thing you can refuse indefinitely, that every night I lose the argument a little earlier than the night before. I have started leaving the pad out again. I want to be honest about that at the end, because it is the truest thing I can tell you about where I am now. For a while, I hid all the paper. I threw out the pads. I recycled the mail the day it came. I kept no pens by the bed, and it did not matter. It found paper. It always finds paper. And hiding the paper only meant I found the notes in worse places, in eyeliner on the tile, in pencil inside the cabinet, once in the steam of the bathroom mirror in the morning, letters drawn in the fog by a finger in the night and reappearing every time the room got warm. A note I could not throw away. A note that came back with every hot shower for a month until I stopped taking hot showers. So I leave the pad out now. On the counter, square to the edge, pen at a right angle, the way I used to, but not as a trap anymore, as a courtesy. I leave her the paper so she will not have to look for it. I tell myself this is surrender, and I tell myself it is strategy, that if she has the pad, she will not write on the walls. But I know the way you know a thing. You will not say out loud that it is neither. It is just what you do for family. You leave the light on. You leave the paper out. You don't make it hard on the one who does the work you're too soft to do. Last night's note is on the counter as I tell you this. I read it with my coffee, in the morning light that comes into this kitchen so kindly, the light I have loved for 4 years, the light I kept the house for. It is in my hand. It is not a list. It is not a time. It stopped being records a while ago, and I did not mark the night it changed. The way you never mark the night a child stops being a baby. You just look up one day, and it has already happened. It says, you understand it now. Good. I've been waiting for you to catch up. Tonight you don't have to fight it. Tonight when you feel yourself going, let go a little sooner. She's asking for you. Bring the pink ones. Leave the window. And don't be scared of the mud. You always come home. I am going to leave the pen at a right angle tonight. I am going to lie down at the ordinary time in the cool, dark room the good doctor told me to keep, and I am going to try, the way I try every night, to stay a sentry against the hour of my own life that I do not own. And I am telling you all of this now, in the daylight, in the reasonable voice, because the daylight woman is the only one of us who is afraid, and I want it once, before I go under again, to say it out loud to someone. That there is no one else in the house, that there has never been anyone else in the house. That I lock the door every night on exactly one person, and every morning the notes are there in my own hand, patient, certain, waiting for me to catch up. I have caught up. That is the last thing. I want you to know that I have caught up, and that catching up did not save me. It only made me quiet, the way understanding a current does not lift you out of it. It only tells you which way you are already being carried. The mud is cold in the morning. Odell keeps her window open. I bring the pink ones, and somewhere past the wet grass, in the hours I will not remember by the time this house fills with its kind light, a hand that is my hand is writing tomorrow's note, warm and sure, for the frightened woman who will find it and read it twice and understand a little more and obey. Rest now, the note says at the bottom in the small hand, the one I used to fit a lot into a corner. Rest now. It's easier when you rest. I know it is. That's the trouble. It is story 3, the steps between us. There are 14 steps between the attic and the landing outside my bedroom door. I know this because I have counted them more times than I have counted anything in my life, more than the years I have been married, more than the days I once crossed off a calendar waiting for a test result that never came back the way I hoped. 14. I counted them the week we moved in. When everything in the house was still a question, I was excited to answer, and I counted them last night, standing in my socks on the cold boards of the landing with the hallway light off, and the number had not changed. The number never changes. What changes is where the weight is. What changes is how many of those 14 are still empty. I want to tell this the way it happened, in the order it happened, because the order is the only thing I still trust. If I skip ahead, if I let myself think about where it is now, I lose my nerve. And I have been losing my nerve a little more each night, the way a rope loses a fiber at a time, until one morning it is only holding by habit. So I will start at the beginning, when the house was just a house and the attic was just a place I put the Christmas boxes. We bought the place in the fall. My husband, Marcus, travels for work 4 days out of most weeks, so a lot of the choosing fell to me, and I remember standing in the empty upstairs hallway on the day of the walkthrough and thinking that I liked how quiet it was. It was a 2-story on a street of 2 stories, the kind of house that photographs plain and lives comfortable. Built in the 70s with good bones and bad wallpaper we peeled off ourselves, downstairs was the ordinary geography of a life. Kitchen, living room, the little office where I do my bookkeeping work, a half bath, the door to the basement I have never liked but have never had a reason not to like. Upstairs was a short landing with 3 doors off it. Our bedroom, a spare room that was going to be a nursery, and then, quietly, stopped being talked about as one. A bathroom, and at the end of the landing, in the wall, a 4th door, narrow, painted the same eggshell as everything else, with a small brass knob that had gone dull. The realtor called it the attic access, and when I opened it that first day, there was a staircase behind it, steep and boxed in on both sides, going up into the dark. Not a pull-down ladder like some houses have, a real staircase, walled, with a switch at the bottom that turned on a bare bulb at the top. I went up. It was an attic. It was an attic like any attic. Rough floorboards laid over the joists in the center, insulation like pink snow packed between the beams at the edges, a round window at the gable end that let in a coin of gray daylight. Warm in a stale way. It smelled of wood and dust and the ghost of somebody else's cardboard. I stood up there for maybe a minute and then I came back down, counting the steps without meaning to, the way you do on an unfamiliar staircase when your body is learning it. I said the number out loud, I think, to no one, and then I shut the narrow door and forgot about it for 2 months. That is the part I keep coming back to. That I forgot about it. That there was a version of me who could stand at the bottom of those stairs and feel nothing at all. The Christmas boxes are what took me back up. The first week of December, Marcus was in Ohio for a trade show, and I decided to get a jump on the decorating so the house would feel like something when he got home. I opened the narrow door, flipped the switch, and went up into the attic to find the bins. I found them fine. Everything was where we had left it. But as I was crouched over the ornaments, checking that the glass ones had survived the move, I noticed something on the top step, right at the head of the stairs, where the floor of the attic met the first step down. A scuff. A pale drag mark in the dust, maybe the length of my hand, curved slightly, as if something had been set down there and then pulled back. I did not think anything of it, not really. Attics are dusty. I had walked up and down those stairs myself. I probably made it. That is what I told myself, and I believed it. And I carried the bins down and decorated the tree, and the mark did not cross my mind again for days. But I want to be honest about the shape of it, because the shape matters. The scuff was on the top step, not the second, not the third. The very top, as if whatever made it had come from inside the attic and stopped at the edge, at the place where the floor gives way to the stairs, and had leaned out over that edge, and then thought better of it and drawn back. The second mark I noticed on my own. I was not looking for it. It was maybe a week later, and I had gone up to put the empty boxes away, and I came down the stairs and my sock caught something gritty on the second step from the top. I stopped. I crouched. In the light of that bare bulb, I saw it clearly. A scuff on the second step, the same length, the same slight curve, and the top step, where the first one had been, was clean. Not cleaner. Clean. Wiped, as if the dust had been disturbed and had settled again smooth, and the mark had moved down one. I remember I laughed. One of those laughs that is really just air leaving you. I told myself the heating had kicked the dust around. I told myself I had misremembered which step. I am a person who reconciles bank statements for a living. I do not misremember which line a number is on, but I told myself I had, because the alternative was a sentence I was not ready to say inside my own head. And I went downstairs and made dinner and did not go back up. Here is where I have to explain what I did next, because I know how it sounds. I did not call anyone. I did not tell Marcus, who was home by then, sitting in the living room with his laptop, close enough that I could have said it in a normal voice and he would have heard. I did not say, "There is a mark on the attic stairs and it moved," because saying it would have made it a thing that was happening, and as long as I did not say it, it was still a thing I could be wrong about. So instead, that night, after Marcus went up to bed, I did something I have never told anyone until now. I took the flour canister from the kitchen, and I went to the narrow door, and I opened it, and I climbed halfway up those steep, boxed-in stairs, and I dusted a thin layer of flour across the third step from the top, edge to edge. Careful, even. Then I came down and closed the door, and went to bed and lay awake next to my sleeping husband with my heart going, like something trying to get out of my chest. In the morning, I waited until Marcus left for the airport. Then I opened the narrow door. I did not turn on the light. The gray from the gable window was enough. I looked at the third step. There was a print in the flour. I want to be careful here, because I replayed this moment so many times that I no longer fully trust my own eyes, and I need you to understand it the way it was, and not the way my fear has sanded it since. It was not a footprint. It was not a handprint. It was a pressure, a wide, shallow depression in the flour, roughly oval, longer than it was wide. The flour pushed out to the sides in a way that meant weight had been set down and lifted. Not dragged. Set. Something with weight had put itself on the third step, in the night, for long enough to leave the shape of itself, and then had gone, and the flour on the fourth step below it. I had only floured the third, but the fourth step below had a scuff on it now. The same length, the same curve. Fresh in the ordinary dust. I closed the door. I went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I did not drink, and I did the arithmetic, because arithmetic is what I do when I am afraid. The top step, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. 4 steps in something like 2 weeks, but the last 2 on consecutive nights. It was speeding up, or I was noticing more, or both. And there were. I made myself count it out on my fingers like a child. 10 steps left. 10 steps between whatever this was and the landing, between it and the 3 doors off the landing, between it and my door. That was the first night I moved to the spare room to sleep, the room that had almost been something else, because it was the only bedroom with a lock on the door. I need to say something about how it felt, because if I only tell you the facts, the marks, and the flour, and the counting, it will sound like a puzzle, and it was never a puzzle. A puzzle waits for you. A puzzle sits there being solved or not solved at your pace, patient, indifferent to whether you ever come back to it. This was not that. This had a direction. Every single thing it did was toward me. The marks did not wander. They did not appear on the top step one night, and the 6th the next, and back to the 3rd the night after. The way a random thing, a settling house, a draft, a mouse, would scatter them. They came down. 1 step. Every night. In order. toward the landing, toward the doors, toward the room where I slept. It was not exploring. It was arriving. And there is a particular cold that comes into you when you understand that a thing is not lost, is not searching, but is coming straight at you at a pace it has already decided on, and that nothing you have done and nothing you can think to do has changed that pace by a single step. Marcus came home Friday. I tried to tell him. I did try. I said I thought there was something living in the attic, and his whole face relaxed, because that was a problem with a phone number attached to it. Raccoons, he said, or squirrels. This time of year they get in. He went up with a flashlight, cheerful about it, banging on the beams, and he came down and said there was nothing up there. No droppings, no nest, no chewed wire, nothing, and that the marks on the stairs were probably from us hauling the boxes. He was so sure and so kind about being sure that I let him be. I did not show him the flower. I had brushed it away that morning. I do not fully know why, except that some animal part of me did not want it to know I was watching. I did not want to make it turn its attention to me any more than it already had. But I want to be clear that I was not a woman sitting still and letting a thing walk down a staircase at her. I fought it in every small way. A person can fight a thing she cannot name. Let me tell you what I tried. I tried the lock. There was no lock on the narrow door, so I bought a hasp and a padlock at the hardware store, and I screwed the hasp into the door and the frame myself, and I locked it. The next morning the padlock was still locked, the hasp still screwed tight, and the mark had moved down one step behind that locked door all the same. It did not need the door open. The door had never been the thing between us. The steps were the thing between us, and the steps were on the inside. I tried filling the space. I dragged the heavy cedar chest from the foot of our bed, and I wedged it onto the stairs, 3 steps up, tilted, jammed in tight between the boxed-in wall so that nothing could pass it. In the morning, the chest was where I left it, not moved an inch, and the mark was on the step below the chest. It had not gone around. There is no around. The stairs are boxed in. It had simply continued on the far side of a thing I could not have gotten a cat past, as if the chest were a suggestion and the descent were a law. I tried leaving the light on. I left that bare bulb burning at the top of the stairs all night, every night, telling myself that whatever this was belonged to the dark and would not come into the light. In the morning, the bulb was burning and the mark had come down 1 step into the light, and I understood that it did not belong to the dark. It did not belong to anything I could turn off with a switch. The dark was just where I could not see it. The light only meant I would see the mark more clearly. And I tried the thing I am most ashamed of, which is that I tried to be reasonable. I made appointments. A pest control man came and set traps and found nothing and took my money. An HVAC guy came because I told him I heard the house settling, and he checked the ducts and said the system was fine, a little old, nothing wrong. I even had an electrician out because I convinced myself for a day and a half that the warmth I kept finding on the steps was a wire heating up behind the wall, and he pulled off the switch plate and put his meter on everything and said there was nothing, ma'am. This is a good clean panel. And I paid him and thanked him and walked him to the door and stood in my own front hall, feeling the specific loneliness of a person who has just been told, kindly and correctly, that the thing terrorizing her does not exist. There's an old woman across the street named Delia who has lived on our block since before the trees were tall, and I went to her one afternoon around the 8th step because I had run out of experts to pay, and a person will try anything when the count keeps dropping. I told her a version of the truth. I said the house made me uneasy at night, that I heard things in the walls, and I asked her, as lightly as I could manage, who had lived there before us. She made me tea. I did not want, and she took a long time answering, and what she finally said was that the family before us, the Ashwells, had been there 11 years and had left fast, in the middle of a school year, which people did not do back then without a reason, and that the wife had come to Delia's door one morning near the end, looking the way I must have looked on Delia's doorstep, thin and hollow and holding her own arms, and had asked Delia a question. Delia never forgot. She had asked whether Delia had ever, in all her years across the street, seen anyone in the round attic window. Delia said no. The wife had nodded like that was the answer she expected, and thanked her and gone home. And 3 weeks later, the moving truck came. Delia did not know what had happened inside that house and did not want to guess, but she told me, patting my hand at the door, that houses are only wood, honey. It is the people in them that carry things. And I thanked her and crossed back over the street to my wood and did not have the heart to tell her that whatever the Ashwell woman had carried, she had left it behind on a staircase, counting. I climbed to the top of the stairs one more time, in daylight the day after Delia. Not to get anything. I wanted to see where it came from. I had this idea, the kind of idea you get when you have not slept, that if I could find the place it started from each night, the place it went back to, I could understand it, or block it, or at least look at the empty spot it left in the morning and feel less like a woman being read a countdown. So I went up, past the 7th step where the warmth had first started, past the marks I no longer bothered to brush away, into the attic. The gray light came through the round window at the gable end. Everything was as it had always been, the Christmas bins, the pink insulation, the rough center boards. But in the far corner, the corner farthest from the stairs, the insulation was pressed down, not torn, not nested, not chewed the way an animal leaves a place. Pressed. A long, shallow hollow in the pink, the length of a person lying down, packed flat and smooth as if a great weight had lain there a long time, years maybe, settling deeper, season by season, and leading away from that hollow toward the head of the stairs. The dust on the center boards was disturbed in a wide, dragless swath, not footprints, just a smooth path, the way carpet wears where people walk the same line for a decade. From the hollow in the corner to the top step, that was its road. It had lain in that corner over our heads all the nights we slept below it, over the Ashwells' heads for 11 years before us, and one autumn it had gotten up, for reasons that have nothing to do with me and everything to do with me, and started down. I did not go into the corner. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked at the hollow and the insulation for a long time, and then I turned off the bare bulb, which I understand now I never needed to leave on and never needed to turn off, and I came down and I did not go up again. There was nothing up there to fix. The thing that had lived in that corner was not in that corner anymore. It was on the stairs where the count was, coming down. The warmth. I have not explained the warmth. That started around the 7th step when it reached the halfway point of the stairs, and it is the detail I have never been able to make peace with. Up to then, the marks had been dry, cold things, dust and pressure, but the night it reached the 7th step, when I went in the morning and crouched and put my fingers on the mark the way I had gotten in the terrible habit of doing, the step was warm. Not warm like sunlight. There was no sun on those boxed-in stairs. Warm like a chair someone has just gotten up from. Warm like the underside of your own pillow when you turn it in the night. Body warm. And it was only the one step. The step it had spent the night on. Warm in a house that was 66 degrees. Warm as if something had rested its whole weight there for hours and had risen only when it heard me at the door. I took my hand away and I did not put it back. Every morning after that, the step where it had spent the night was warm. And every morning I could not stop myself from checking, the way you cannot stop your tongue from going to a sore tooth. And every morning the warmth was one step lower than the day before, one step closer to the landing, one step closer to me. I stopped sleeping. I do not mean I slept badly. I mean I stopped. I would lie in the spare room with the door locked and my back to the wall, and I would listen. The house makes noises. Every house makes noises, and I had lived there long enough to know all of ours, the tick of the baseboard heat, the sigh of the water heater, the particular creak of the 3rd stair on the main staircase that Marcus always hit and I always skipped. I knew our house's voice. And in the deep middle of those nights, in the hour when even the refrigerator holds its breath, I would hear a new sound from the other side of the wall, from the boxed-in stairs behind the narrow door. A settling. That is the only word I have for it. Not a footstep. Not a knock. A settling. The sound of a great weight easing itself down onto wood. a long, slow creak of a board taking a load, and then silence. A silence with a shape to it. A silence that was listening back, and I would lie there and I would know, without going to look, without needing to count, that it had come down one more step, that there was one fewer step between us than there had been at dinner. There was one night, around the 9th step, that I have not been able to file away with the others, and I will put it here because it is the closest I ever came to the thing, and I do not fully understand what happened. I had given up on my phone catching the settling, so that night I did something worse. I took a kitchen chair out onto the landing itself and I sat in it, in the dark, facing the narrow door, close enough to touch it, and I decided I would simply be there when it came down. I would not listen through a wall. I would sit on the same 8 feet of floor as the sound, and I would hear it happen, and then at least I would know it the way you know a thing you have witnessed and not just deduced. I sat there for hours. The house cooled. My feet went cold on the boards, and a little after 3, the smell came first, which it never had before. A smell that came up under the narrow door like a draft, cold and mineral and faintly sweet. The smell of the underside of a stone you turn over in a garden, wet earth and something older than earth. And then the settling started. Right there, a foot from my face, on the other side of an inch of wood, that long, slow easing of a weight I could feel move the floor under my chair. And I sat absolutely still with my hands gripping the seat, and I did not open the door. I want you to know I did not open the door. Every night before that I had told myself I was brave, because I went and felt the wood in the morning. That night I learned what I actually was, which is a woman who will sit in the dark 12 inches from the thing counting her down and will not, cannot, will never open the door, and who understood in that moment that the door had never been keeping it in. The door was keeping me out of the count for one more night. I got up and went back to the spare room, and I did not sit on the landing again. Marcus and I fought about it, in the end, in the quiet way we fight, which is worse than shouting. He came home from a week away and found me hollow-eyed and thin and sleeping in the spare room with a chair jammed under the knob, and he was frightened. I could see it, but he was frightened for me, not of anything, and there is a canyon between those two fears that we could not talk across. He wanted me to see someone. He said the word without saying it, the way people do. He said maybe you should talk to somebody, and I understood that in his version of events his wife was unraveling in an empty house, inventing a monster out of dust and loneliness in the thing we did not talk about, the room that was never going to be a nursery, and I could not prove him wrong. That was the unbearable part, because everything I could show him was ordinary, a mark in the dust, a warm step in a house with old heating, a padlock still locked. I had no photograph that showed anything, though I had taken dozens. A scuff on a stair, photographs as nothing, as a smudge, as a trick of the light. I had no sound recorded, though I had left my phone running on the landing 4 nights straight. The settling never came when the phone was listening, only when I was. It knew the difference. I am telling you, it knew the difference between a machine listening and a woman listening, and it only came for the woman. So I let him think what he needed to think, and he made me an appointment I did not keep, and he flew to Denver on Monday. And I was alone in the house with it again, and it was on the 11th step. 11. 3 steps left. 3 steps to the landing. I have thought a great deal in these sleepless nights about what it wants, and I have stopped believing it wants anything the way I want things. Wanting is a warm thing. Wanting has a heat of hope in it. This has no hope in it, and no heat except the borrowed heat of the step it sat on. It does not want me the way a person wants. It is coming the way winter comes, the way the tide comes, the way the hour hand comes around to the number, whether you watch it or not. It is not hunting me, because hunting can fail. It is not chasing me, because chasing can be outrun. It is simply on its way, and I happen to be at the end of the way. And the only thing I have any say over is how I spend the steps that are left. Because I have realized, and this is the thing I most need to say, that I am not counting the steps between it and the landing anymore. I am counting the nights between me and it. They are the same number. That is the whole horror of the arithmetic. though I promised myself I would not use that word, that the steps and the nights are one count, that each night it spends one step, that the staircase is a calendar and something is turning the page, and I and the date circled at the bottom. Let me tell you about the 12th step, because that was the night I understood I could not leave. It was a Thursday. Marcus was in Denver. It had reached the 12th step, third from the bottom, and I could not do it anymore. I could not spend one more night in that house listening for the settling, so I packed a bag. I was going to go to my sister's, 2 hours away, and I was going to sleep in her guest room where the stairs were her stairs and had nothing on them but her children's shoes. I got the bag in the car, I had my keys, and I stood in the driveway in the cold with the engine running, and I could not make myself pull out because a thought had come to me, and once it came, I could not get rid of it. The thought was this: it is not coming down the stairs. It is coming to me. The stairs are just where it happens to be while it comes, and if I leave, it will not stay politely on the 12th step waiting for me to come back. It will simply be wherever I am, at whatever step of its own count it has reached, and I will have taught it that it can follow. I will have taken the one comfort I have left, which is that at least I know exactly where it is and exactly how far, and I will have traded it for not knowing, for lying in my sister's guest room 2 hours away listening for a settling in a staircase that has no attic, and knowing that if it is not there, it is only because it is closer. So I turned off the engine and I brought the bag back inside. I know how that sounds. I know a sensible person reads that and wants to reach into the page and shake me, but I would ask that sensible person to sit for one night in the locked room and listen to a weight come down a staircase toward them, one step a night, in perfect order, indifferent to every lock and every light and every reasonable man who tells them there is nothing there, and then decide whether the devil you can count is worse than the devil you cannot. The 13th step. Last night was the 13th step, second from the bottom. I did not sleep, of course. I have not really slept in what I think is 9 days, though the days have run together and I would not swear to the number. I sat up in the spare room with the light on and my back to the wall, and I listened, and a little after 3 in the morning I heard it, the settling. Longer than it had ever been, a great slow easing of weight onto wood. So close now that I did not just hear it through the wall, I felt it. A faint tremor come up through the floor of the spare room and into the base of my spine, the way you feel a truck go by in the street when you are lying down. And then the silence after, the listening silence, and I swear to you it was closer to the door than the wall now. I swear the silence was standing on the landing side of the narrow door, at the bottom of the stairs, where the 14th and last step lets out onto the boards of the landing, not 8 feet from where I sat. I got up. I do not know why I got up. Every sensible part of me was screaming to stay against the wall, but there is a part of a person that has to see, that would rather look at the thing than lie in the dark building it out of imagination, and that part got me up and moved the chair and turned the knob. I opened the spare room door onto the landing. The hallway light was off. The narrow door at the end of the landing was closed, padlock still hanging locked in its hasp where I had left it weeks ago, in the days when I still thought a lock could be part of this. And the landing was empty. Of course it was empty. It is always empty when I look, but I crossed to the narrow door in my socks on the cold boards, and I put my hand flat against the wood, over the place where the second step from the bottom would be on the other side. It was warm. The whole door, warm as a living thing, warm as a body leaning on the other side of it, warm as something that had come down 13 steps to stand at the foot of the last one, with only the boards of a door between its weight and my hand. I have spent today the way I have spent all the days lately, doing the ordinary things with my hands while my mind stays on the stairs. I paid 3 invoices. I ate half a sandwich standing at the counter. I called Marcus. And I did not tell him, because there is nothing he can do from Denver, except be afraid 2,000 miles away. And because I am not sure anymore that this is a thing that can be shared, that can be gotten between 2 people, and made smaller. I think it has always been mine, the way a debt is yours, the way an appointment is yours, waiting in the book with your name written next to a time. Because here is the arithmetic I cannot make come out any other way. And I have tried. I have sat with it all afternoon and tried to find the error the way I find errors in a ledger. And there is no error. There is one step left. The 14th. The last step is the one that lets out onto the landing, onto the floor I walk on, onto the level where the doors are, where my door is. It is on the 13th step tonight. That means tonight, in the dark, in the deep middle hour when the refrigerator holds its breath, it will spend its one step. It will come down the last one. And in the morning, the mark will not be on the stairs at all, because there will be no more stairs for it to be on. In the morning, the warm place will be somewhere on the landing. On my floor, on my level, on the same flat plane of the house as the door I sleep behind, with nothing between us anymore that can be measured in steps, because the counting only worked while it was on the stairs, and after tonight the stairs are behind it. I have thought about not sleeping tonight. I have thought about sitting up against the wall with the light on the way I have every night, listening for the settling. But I am so tired. I am tired in a way I did not know a body could be, tired past fear almost, and I have started to understand that staying awake was never protecting me. It was only making me watch. It never once came down slower because I was listening. It never once stayed on its step because I was afraid. My fear has been the most useless thing I own. All it has done is make sure I was awake to count. So I think tonight I will not count. I think tonight I will lie down in the spare room with the door locked and the light off, and I will let the house make its noises, and if there is a settling on the last step in the dark, I will not get up to feel the door. I will not do the arithmetic. I will just lie there and let it spend its step, the way I can never stop it from spending any of the others. There are 14 steps between the attic and the landing. There was, when this began, a whole staircase of nights between us. There is one left, and after tonight there will be none. And the thing I have counted down to for all these sleepless weeks will be standing, warm and weightless and perfectly certain, on the same floor as me, in the dark, on the other side of a door that was never the thing between us. I keep the light off now, and I listen to the house breathe, and I wait for the last step. Rest, if you can. I no longer can. But you should. Somewhere in your own house there is a staircase, and if you are lucky, if you are very lucky, there's nothing on it but the dust, and the number of steps between you and whatever waits at the top of them is larger than the number of nights you have left. Count them, if it comforts you. It comforted me, for a while. Count them, and then turn off the light, and try not to listen for the settling. It comes whether you listen or not. That is the only mercy in it, and it is not a mercy at all. Good night. Sleep. There is one step left, and it is not yours. Story 4. The woman who sold me the house. The house was cheaper than it should have been, and I want to start there, because it is the first thing anyone asks. Not the notes. Not the garden. They always come back to the price, as if the price is where the whole thing hides. As if I could have read the future in a number. It was a 2-bedroom on Ardsley Lane, in a town small enough that the man at the hardware store learned my name before I learned his. 1940s. Construction, good bones, a deep backlot that ran down to a line of old lilacs. It was listed at $40,000 under what the 2 houses on either side had sold for the spring before. My agent called it a motivated seller. I was newly divorced, working from home for a health insurance company, and I was very motivated too, so I did not push on the word. The seller was a woman named Margaret Voss. I met her exactly once, at the closing, in a beige conference room at the title company. She was somewhere past 80, small and upright, with white hair set in the kind of careful curl you only get from a standing weekly appointment. She wore a gray wool coat, even though it was warm out. She signed everything without reading it, the way you do when you have signed 1,000 things in your life and stopped expecting any of them to surprise you. When it was done, she folded her hands on the table and looked at me for a while, and I thought she was going to say something sentimental about the house. People do that. They tell you where they measured the children against the doorframe. Instead, she said, you will want to leave the porch light on at night. It settles the street. I said I would. It seemed like a kind thing to say back. She nodded once, as though I had agreed to a term of the sale that had somehow not made it into the paperwork. And then her daughter helped her up and out, and that was the last time I saw Margaret Voss face to face. That is important, and I need you to hold on to it, because everything after happened without me ever seeing her again clearly. Not once. Not in daylight where I can be sure. I moved in over a weekend in late September. The house was clean in the way of a place that has been kept clean for decades by someone who did not know how to leave a thing undone. There was no dust behind the doors. The insides of the cabinets had been lined with fresh paper. In the kitchen drawer where everyone keeps the small dead things, the rubber bands and the loose keys and the pizza coupons, there was instead a single index card, and on it, in a slanted, careful hand, it said, "The disposal jams if you put celery down it. Run cold water first." I laughed when I found that. I actually laughed out loud in the empty kitchen. It was thoughtful. It was the kind of thing a grandmother leaves. I stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a strawberry that I had brought from the old apartment, and I thought, well, that is a nice welcome, and I did not think about it again for almost a week. The garden was the first thing that did not fit. I am not a gardener. I want to be honest about the person I was that fall, because it matters to how slowly I understood. I had never owned a yard in my life. I looked at the back lot, the way you look at a language you do not speak, aware that it was saying something, unable to say what. There were beds along the fence, edged in brick, and they were full. Not overgrown, knock on to seed the way you would expect a garden to go when its keeper has moved to a one-bedroom apartment across town. Full and trimmed and weeded. There were chrysanthemums coming in gold and rust along the back, the way they do in October, and someone had cut back the spent stalks of whatever had bloomed before them and left the cut ends clean. I stood there with my coffee that first Saturday morning, and I told myself the previous owner had simply left it in good shape. Gardens have momentum. That is a real thing, I told myself. A well-kept bed does not fall apart in 3 weeks, and I let it go, because I wanted to let it go. Because it was a beautiful morning, and I had bought a house by myself for the first time in my life, and I did not want the first thing I felt in the yard to be unease. But I kept a rain gauge on the deck rail, one of those clear plastic tubes, because the man at the hardware store had sold me one along with the rake I did not know how to use. And 3 days later, on a dry week, no rain in the gauge at all, the beds along the fence were dark and damp at the base of the plants, watered. Recently. The brick edging was spotted where the spray had carried. I want to walk you through what I actually thought in order, because I think the order is the whole thing. First I thought, a sprinkler. There must be an irrigation system on a timer, and no one told me, and it is watering the beds on a schedule set years ago. That is a completely reasonable thought, and I held it for about a day, until I went looking for the controller. There was none. No box in the garage, no valves in the beds, no heads in the grass. I walked the whole lot on my knees looking for a sprinkler head and got nothing but wet jeans. The beds were being watered by a person with a can or a hose, by hand, the way you water when you love a specific plant and not just a lawn. The second thing I thought was the daughter. Margaret's daughter, the one who had helped her up at the closing. Maybe she came by to keep an eye on her mother's flowers, out of sentiment, out of habit, not wanting to tell the new owner because it would sound strange. That one I liked. That one let everybody be a normal, sad, understandable person. A grown daughter watering her elderly mother's chrysanthemums. One more autumn because the mother could not bear to let them die. I could live inside that story. I lived inside it for weeks. So I did the reasonable thing. I left a note of my own. I am, or I was, a person who believes in solving things with a note. I wrote on a page from a legal pad, "Hi, I so appreciate whoever is keeping up the back beds. They're beautiful. but please feel free to knock and say hello. I'd love to meet you." I weighted it with a stone on the brick edging, right by the gold mums, where anyone tending them would have to see it. It was gone the next morning, not blown away. The stone was set neatly to the side of where the note had been placed, not knocked, and the beds had been watered again. I did not sleep well that night, and I remember being angry at myself for it, lying awake in a house I had bought free and clear, listening to it tick as it cooled, angry that a garden was keeping me up. I decided in the dark that I was being a city person about it. In a small town, people do neighborly things and do not always announce themselves. Someone was being kind in an old-fashioned, wordless way, and I was lying awake treating kindness like a threat because I had spent too many years in an apartment where the only person who touched your things was a thief. That reframing held me for about a week, too. I was good that fall at reframing. I want you to understand that I was not a foolish woman. I was a careful woman, being careful in exactly the wrong direction. The chair was next, and the chair is the one that still moves something in me when I think about it, more than the notes, more than the rest of it. There was an armchair in the front room, a wingback in a faded green that had come with the house. It was the only piece of furniture Margaret Voss had left behind, and my agent had said, half apologizing, that the seller had asked if it could stay, that it was too heavy and she had no room for it. And did I mind? I did not mind. It was a good chair. I put it where I wanted it, angled toward the television, because I am a person who watches television in the evening, and I had arranged the whole room around that fact. One morning, it was facing the window, turned squarely to look out the front window at the street, not nudged, not at an angle, as though I had bumped it moving past in the dark, turned a full 90 degrees and set so its front feet lined up with a seam in the floorboards. Deliberate, the way you set a chair when the position matters to you. I stood in the doorway with my coffee going cold, and I felt the first real drop of it, the first cold, clean drop of the thing I had been keeping out. And I turned the chair back toward the television, and I did not say anything to anyone, because who would I say it to, and what would I say? My chair moved. That is the sentence. It sounds like nothing. It sounds like I moved it and forgot. I turned it back. In the morning, it was at the window again. This went on. I would set it facing the room, the television, the life I was building. In the night, it would return to the window, to the street, to the view Margaret Voss had watched from that chair for what I would later learn was 51 years. I started marking the floor with a strip of blue painter's tape, the exact position I left it in, and every morning the front feet had crossed the tape and turned to the glass. I stopped sitting in it. I could not sit in a chair that knew where it wanted to be better than I did. I changed the locks. I should have led with that, maybe, but I want to be honest that I did not do it first. I did it after the chair, which tells you how slow I was, how much I wanted the ordinary explanation. A locksmith came out, a big, calm young man who rekeyed the front and back doors and the door from the garage in about an hour. And I stood there and watched him do all three because I wanted to be sure. And I paid him, and I felt, for one whole day, safe. New keys on a new ring. Nobody had these but me. The notes started arriving after the locks changed, which I have thought about more than I want to admit. As if the person understood that the door was closed to them now in the old way, and chose another way in. The first one I found on the kitchen counter, and I want to be precise, because precision is all I have. It was on the same kind of index card as the one about the garbage disposal, the same slanted, careful hand. It said, "She likes the porch light on. Please don't forget it. The lilacs need cutting back before the first hard frost, or they won't flower." I stood in my kitchen with the door locked, with the new key in my pocket, holding a card that had not been there when I went to bed, and I read the word she, and I could not make it mean anything that let me keep breathing normally. She. Not you. Not I. She. The porch light was for a she, and the note was not to me, but about me, to someone else, about a woman who lived in this house and did not know yet that she had a keeper. I told myself it was left behind. That is the thing I reached for. It had been under something, and it surfaced. And she was the house, or she was the garden, or she was some plant, some rose, some habit of speech an old woman has, referring to her home as she, the way people name their cars. I told myself all of it, and none of it touched the fact that the card was clean. No dust, no curl at the corners, new ink. It had been written recently, by a steady hand, and set on my counter, in my locked house, in the night. I called the daughter. It took me 2 days to find the number, through the agent, through the title company, and when a woman answered and I said I was the one who bought the house in Ardsley, there was a silence on the line that I have replayed more times than I can count. Then she said, carefully, "Is everything all right with the house?" I said the house was fine. I said I thought someone might be coming into the yard, maybe by mistake, maybe someone who used to help her mother, and I did not want to make trouble. I only wanted to say hello. I did not mention the chair. I did not mention the word she on the card. I was still, even then, trying to be the reasonable one, the one who did not accuse. She was quiet again, and then she said, "My mother is in Cedar Court now, the memory care wing. She has been there since the end of August." She said, "The end of August, the way you say a date you have circled in red." The closing had been the second week of September. Margaret Voss had signed my house over to me from inside a locked memory care unit, brought out for the afternoon by her daughter, and taken back before dinner. "She can't drive," the daughter said. "She hasn't driven in 3 years. She doesn't leave. There are codes on the doors." I said I understood. I said it was probably nothing, a neighbor, a mix-up. And the daughter, before she hung up, said one more thing, and she said it fast and low. "The way you say a thing you have decided in that second to say and already regret," she said. She was very upset about selling. She didn't want to. We had to. "If you find her things, if anything of hers turns up, you can just throw it out. You don't have to keep it. Whatever it is, throw it out." If anything of hers turns up. Not if you find anything of hers. Turns up, as though things belonging to a woman locked in a memory care unit 11 miles away might, on their own, turn up in a house that was now mine, and the daughter already knew it and had known it long enough to have a policy about it. I threw the cards out, both of them, the disposal one and the porch light one. I put them in the kitchen trash and took the bag to the can in the garage that same night because I did not want them in the house, and I told myself that was the end of it, that I had found the thread and pulled it, that the answer was a sad, demented old woman with a helper somewhere who was carrying out her wishes, and that once I made it clear this was my house, it would stop. It did not stop. It changed. The mail came for a woman named Margaret Voss all that October, which was ordinary enough. Forwarding takes time, catalogs are slow, but in November, things started coming that were not forwarded. A seed catalog, addressed to my address, to the current resident, is normal. A hand-addressed envelope, no stamp, no postmark, tucked inside the storm door between the glass and the frame where the letter carrier does not put things, addressed in that slanted hand to the lady of the house, is not. I opened it standing on the porch in the cold. Inside was a single sheet of good paper, folded once, and on it a list, written out neatly like a recipe. It said, at the top, "For the winter," and then, "Wrap the outside faucet or the pipe in the crawl space will freeze." It did in 78 and again in 02. "The furnace filter is behind the panel in the hall. Change it or the back bedroom won't heat and she'll be cold. Keep salt by the front step, she falls. The garbage men come Thursday, but they come early. Put it out Wednesday night." And at the bottom, underlined twice, "Don't let them tell you she has to go. She belongs to this house. She has always belonged to this house. She, her, cold, falls, belongs." I read it 4 times on the porch until my hands were numb, and each time I read it, I understood a little more clearly that the she in the note was me. that someone had watched me long enough to worry about me falling on my own front step, that someone was leaving me instructions for how to survive a winter in a house they knew far better than I did, and calling it belonging, and that the instructions were not wrong. The pipe in the crawl space would freeze. The back bedroom was cold. I had already noticed the back bedroom was cold. There was a neighbor I should tell you about, an older man named Duckworth who lived in the ranch house on the corner and raked his gravel driveway with a real rake, back and forth, and even rose, the way some men do a thing, not because it needs doing, but because the doing is what holds the day together. I walked down one gray afternoon in November with the list note folded in my coat pocket, not to show him, just to have it, and I asked him, as lightly as I could manage, whether he had known Margaret Voss. He set the rake down. He looked at my house over my shoulder for a while before he looked at me, and I have thought since that this is how you can tell the people who already know something. They look at the house first. 51 years, he said. Her and Walt, and then just her after Walt. She kept that place like a pin. He said it with respect, and with something underneath the respect that he did not put a word to. Then he said, she used to worry about it something terrible. Toward the end, before the girl put her in the home, she'd come down here in her nightgown once or twice after dark, and I'd walk her back, and she'd say the same thing every time. He picked the rake back up because he had decided to say it and needed his hands busy to do it. She'd say, who's going to take care of her when I'm gone? And I'd say, take care of who, Margaret? There's nobody in there but you. And she'd look at me like I was the one who'd lost the thread, and she'd say, the lady of the house. Somebody has to look after the lady of the house. I did not tell him about the notes. I thanked him, and I walked back up the street to my own porch, past the light I kept on because a woman in a memory care unit had told me to, and I let myself in, and I stood in the front hall a long time. Somebody has to look after the lady of the house. She had been leaving those notes for years before she was locked away. She had been worrying about me, or about the idea of me, the next woman, the one who would come after her the way she had come after someone else, long before I existed to her as anything but a name at the bottom of a contract she did not want to sign. The key was the thing that made me stop pretending, and I mean the old key, the one from before the locksmith. I had a ring of them left over from the closing, the seller's set, 4 keys on a loop of dirty twine that the agent had handed me in a manila envelope, and I had meant to throw them out, and had not. Because you never throw out keys, no one does. They go in the drawer with the other small, dead things, and they outlive the locks they were cut for. After the locksmith came, I had assumed those old keys were nothing now, meaningless brass, cut for a house that no longer answered to them. One night in December, out of a compulsion I still cannot fully explain, I took the loop of old keys to the front door, and I tried them. I do not know what I wanted. I think I wanted to prove to myself that the world was still fastened down, that the new locks were new, that the past could not simply walk in on the old brass. I put the biggest key in the front deadbolt, and it went in smooth all the way, and it turned. It turned. A locksmith does not cut a new lock to an old key by accident. The odds are nothing. They are worse than nothing. Someone had had my new lock rekeyed to match the old one, or the locksmith had never changed it at all. I'd stood in my hall for an hour doing something that looked like changing a lock while I watched and trusted, because that is what you do. You watch the hands and you trust. I called the locksmith's number the next morning, and it rang and rang, and then a recording said the number was not in service, and the card he had left me had a name on it that the hardware store man, when I read it to him, said he had never heard of, and there was no such business in the county that anyone could find. The mail was the last ordinary thing to turn strange, and it turned strange in the most intimate way, which was that it started coming in my name for things I would want, not Margaret's catalogs. Mine, a sample box of the exact tea I drink, the loose Irish breakfast I order online, arrived free, unbidden, addressed to me. Thank you for being a valued customer. When I had signed up for nothing, a gardening magazine began to come, addressed to me, a subscription I had not bought. with a little sticker on the front that said, "Renewed on your behalf." A catalog of orthopedic house shoes, the wide, soft kind you buy an old woman so she will not fall, addressed to me, at my age, at my address. Someone was ordering me the things a person orders for someone. They are settling in for a long stay. Someone was furnishing my life the way you furnish a room for a guest who is going to become a resident, who does not know yet that they are never going to leave. I did the sensible modern thing then, finally, the thing I should have done in September. I bought cameras. 2 of them, the little white ones that talk to your phone, one on the front porch and one on the back deck looking down the yard at the garden. I set them up myself, standing on a kitchen chair, and I felt, screwing them into the soffit, a grim kind of relief, because now I would have it, whatever it was, on my phone, in the daylight of a screen, a normal explanation with a face and a name. For 9 days, the cameras showed me nothing but the street and the yard, cars, my own mail carrier, a cat that was not mine and that I did not feed because I do not encourage other people's cats to come around, but that walked the top of the back fence like it owned it. Leaves. Rain. On the 10th day, the garden had been watered again and cut back for winter. The mums pinched off, the lilacs pruned into hard, clean stubs, exactly as the note had instructed me to do, and I had not done. And the camera on the back deck showed 9 days of leaves and rain, and the cat on the fence, and nothing. No person, no shadow, no shape. The bed simply dry in one frame, and dark and tended in the next, across a gap of 11 minutes in the night, when the camera, its little log told me, had lost connection to the network and come back. 11 minutes. Once. In 9 days. And in that 11 minutes, an entire garden had been put to bed for the winter by someone who knew, apparently, exactly where the camera was, and exactly how long they needed, and exactly which 11 minutes the network would drop, in a house whose network I had set up myself the week I moved in, whose password I had told to no one. I'm going to tell you the part now that I have never told anyone, not the daughter, not the officer who eventually came out and wrote down my address and very little else, not my sister, who thinks I sold the house because it was too much to keep up alone. I have not told anyone the part about the piano. There was no piano. I need to say that first. There is no piano in this story, and there never was one in the house. Not while I lived there, but taped to the inside of the coat closet door, low, at the height where you would tape a thing meant only to be seen by someone kneeling to reach the back of the closet. There was a note that I did not find until December, until I was down on my knees looking for a boot, and it said, in that hand, "Please don't move the piano. She likes to hear it from the kitchen. It has always stood against this wall." I knelt in the closet and I put my hand flat on the wall. The note was talking about the wall the closet backed onto, the kitchen wall, and I understood that the note was old, older than the others. The tape had yellowed. The ink had faded at the folds. This was a note that had been written years ago for someone about a piano that had once stood against that wall in a room that was now my kitchen, and it had waited in the dark of that closet through however many owners, and it was addressed, like the others, to a she, to the lady of the house, to whatever woman came next and would need to be told how the house wanted to be lived in. Margaret Voss had lived there 51 years. She was not the first. That is the thought that got into me and would not leave. The notes did not start with Margaret. Margaret had found them too, once, kneeling for a boot, a young woman moving into an old house, and had read that she likes to hear it from the kitchen, and had felt the cold drop I was feeling, and had, somewhere across those 51 years, stopped fighting it, had started leaving the notes herself, had watered the garden of the woman who came before her, and the woman before that, all the way back down the line to whoever first wrote, "Please don't move the piano," and meant it about her own dead mother, or her own self, or a house she could not stop belonging to even after she was gone from it. That is what I think happened. I want to be careful and say that I do not know. I never found a person. That is the truth at the center of this, and I will not decorate it. I never saw anyone in the yard, never caught anyone on the cameras, never heard a footstep that I could swear to. The only face I ever saw was Margaret Voss's, once across a title company table, when she told me to keep the porch light on because it settles the street. Everything else was the work of hands I never saw, doing the loving, patient, unbearable work of keeping a house the way it had always been kept, for a woman who lived in it, who was me, until I made myself stop being her. The last note came in January, and it is the reason I left. It was on the pillow. My pillow. On the bed I slept in the back bedroom that ran cold, on the side I slept on, in the morning, after a night when the house had been locked and the cameras had run and shown me the street, the yard, the cat, the rain, and nothing else. I woke up and turned my head, and it was there on the pillow beside my face, an index card, and I did not touch it for a long time. I lay very still and looked at it. The way you look at a spider you do not want to lose track of, and I read it from 6 inches away without moving, and it said, "You're doing everything right now. I'll take care of the rest. You don't have to stay awake for it. Rest." And under that, smaller, the way you add a thing you almost did not say, "She's happy here." Finally, thank you for coming home. I moved out that week. I did not change the locks again. I did not call anyone. I did not tend the garden or cut the lilacs or wrap the outside faucet, though I have wondered, all the winter since, whether the pipe in the crawl space froze, or whether someone got to it in time, someone kneeling in the cold under the house doing the thing the note said to do, taking care of the rest so that the house would be warm and dry and kept for whoever came home next. I sold it in the spring. I sold it, I am ashamed to say, $40,000 under what the houses on either side had gone for, to a young woman who was newly something, newly divorced or newly widowed, I did not ask, a woman about the age I had been, who stood in the empty front room and said the light through that window was beautiful, and I agreed that it was, and I did not tell her to keep the porch light on at night, and I did not tell her the chair would want to face the street, because I could not make my mouth form the sentences without sounding like the kind of woman you do not sell a house to, the kind of woman who is not right, and because some cowardly, tired part of me thought, maybe it will be different for her. Maybe she will be the one it lets alone. But I left one thing. I did not mean to. I found it later in the box I had labeled kitchen, packed in a hurry the week I ran. The first index card, the one about the garbage disposal, run cold water first, the one I thought I had thrown away in September. I had thrown it away. I know I did. I took the bag to the garage myself, and it was in the box-marked kitchen in my new apartment across town, in the slanted, careful hand, and I sat on the floor of a place that had no history and no chair that wanted the window, and I held it, and I understood that I would never be sure of anything again, whether I threw it out, whether I packed it, whether the line between my hands and hers had ever been as clear as I needed it to be. I want to tell you where the fear actually lives now that I am years away from it and can look at it in daylight. It is not that someone was in the house. People break into houses. That is a thing that happens, and there are locks and cameras and officers who write down your address, and it is frightening in a way that has a shape you can hold. The fear is quieter than that, and it does not go away. The fear is that no one was breaking in, that the person leaving the notes did not think of it as breaking in, because in every way that mattered to her, the house was still hers, and I was the intruder, a temporary tenant in a home she had kept for half a century, and she was only doing what a good keeper does, which is to look after the house and the woman in it, whether or not the woman understands yet that she has been taken in. The garden was not being tended against me. The chair was not being turned to spite me. The notes were not threats. That is the part I could never explain to the officer, who kept asking me what she wanted, what the threat was, what she had said she would do, because there was no threat. There was never any threat. There was only care, relentless and precise and patient and absolutely certain that it knew better than I did, how I should live in the house that it always, would always belong to her. You cannot call the police about care. There is no law against someone loving a house so much they will not let it stop being theirs. There is no restraining order you can take out against tenderness. I tried to find the words for it, sitting in the beige rooms of official people, and every word I found made me sound like the unwell one, because the acts themselves listed out were kind. A watered garden, a changed furnace filter, who calls the police because someone salted their step. And I keep coming back, at the end, to Margaret Voss in the beige conference room, upright in her gray coat, signing away a house she did not want to sell, telling me to keep the porch light on because it settles the street. I have decided, though I cannot prove it, that she was not warning me. She was reassuring someone. She was letting whoever kept the notes know that the new woman had been told, that the porch light would stay on, that the house was in good hands, that she, the woman who came next, would be looked after the way all of them had been looked after, all the way down the line. Margaret Voss was not the danger. Margaret Voss was the last woman it had finished with, handing me over, gently, the way you hand over anything you have loved and can no longer keep, to someone you trust to carry it the rest of the way. I never went back, but I drive past, once a year or so, on the road that runs along the top of the town where you can see the back lots of the houses on Ardsley Lane, and I slow down, and I look at the back beds along the fence of the house that was mine for one autumn and one winter, and every year they are full, weeded, cut back in the fall, coming up gold in October, watered, I would bet, on the dry weeks by a hand I never saw, for a woman I hope is happier there than I was, a woman who stands at her front window in a green chair that faces the street and does not remember anymore ever having wanted it to face anything else. The porch light is always on, even in the daytime, when you would think someone would notice it burning and go out to switch it off. It is always on. It settles the street. Rest now. You don't have to stay awake for the end of it. Someone has already taken care of the rest. Story 5. Room by room. Start with the window over the kitchen sink, because that is where you started, whether you remember it or not. It is a small window, the kind that cranks open on a little handle you have to turn twice to move an inch. You keep it shut because the screen has a tear in the corner, and because the crank is stiff, and because you never open it anyway. In the summer, you run the air. In the winter, you would not dream of it. It is not a window you think about. It is behind the faucet, above the drying rack, and it looks out on the side yard where the trash cans live, and the neighbor's fence leans a little more every year. You have washed 1,000 dishes in front of that window without once considering it. So when you come down for water at some hour that is not quite night and not quite morning, and you find it standing open, the handle cranked all the way out, the torn screen breathing a thin, cold line across the counter, you do not believe it at first. You believe you are half asleep. You believe you left it open in the afternoon and forgot. You reach across the sink and you turn the crank, 2 full rotations, until the glass seats against the frame and the little metal arm locks flat, and you go back to bed, and you do not think about it again. That is night 1. You should mark it because you will want to later. You will want to know exactly when the house stopped being only yours. The thing about a house you have lived in for years is that you do not see it anymore. You move through it with your eyes half closed. Your hand finds the light switch in the dark because your hand has found it 10,000 times. You know which stair complains and you step over it without deciding to. You know the house the way you know your own body, which is to say you do not know it at all. You simply use it. You could not tell a stranger how many steps run from the landing to the front hall. You have never counted them. You have never needed to. Something is counting them now. On night 2, the window is open again. You come down later this time, closer to 3 than to 2, and you stand in the kitchen doorway with the cold already on your bare feet before you understand what it is. The window is cranked out to the same inch, no more, no less. The drying rack is where it was. The dish towel is folded over the oven handle, the way you fold it. Nothing is wrong except the window, which you closed, which you know you closed, because you remember the 2 full turns of the crank and the flat click of the arm. You close it again. You stand there a while with your hand on the cold metal, and you tell yourself the crank is worn, the arm does not catch, the seal has gone, the house is old and houses do this. You will call someone about it. You go back to bed and you lie awake longer than you would like. listening to the furnace tick and the fridge cycle and the small settling sounds a house makes when it thinks no one is listening, and none of it is unusual, and all of it keeps you up. In the morning, you look at the window in daylight, and it looks like a window. You crank it open and shut a few times to feel the mechanism. It is stiff. The arm catches every time. It does not fall open on its own. You could hang a bag of flour off that handle, and it would not turn. You put your coffee down, and you look at it for a long moment, and then you decide, the way people decide, that there is an explanation you have not thought of yet. And you go to work. For 3 nights, nothing happens, or you think nothing happens, which is not the same. You sleep. You come down in the mornings and the window is shut. You begin to forget the cold on your feet. This is how it wants you, though it does not want anything, not the way you mean it. It has no appetite for your forgetting. Your forgetting is simply the condition it works in, the way a burglar works in the dark. It is not patient with you. It does not wait for you. It is only that its work does not require your attention, and it is easier without it. On the 6th night, you notice the chair. You have a small table in the kitchen, pushed against the wall with 2 chairs. You only ever use one. The other sits at the end, tucked in, its back to the room. You have not moved that chair in months, maybe longer. It holds a folded blanket and a stack of mail you mean to deal with. And it is, functionally, a shelf. The mail is on the floor now, in a neat slide, not knocked, placed. The blanket is folded on the seat, and the chair has been turned. It faces the doorway to the hall. It faces the dark mouth of the house where the hall runs back past the stairs to the rest of the rooms, and it is angled precisely, the way you would angle a chair if you wanted to sit in it and watch something come down that hall towards you. You stand in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, and you look at the chair, and the chair looks at the hall, and the window over the sink is open again, and the cold is coming across the counter and pooling on the floor, and for the first time you are afraid, not of an intruder, not of a person, but of the arrangement of your own furniture, which is a fear you did not know you had a shape for. You turn the chair back. You put the mail on it. You close the window. You do not go back to sleep. Let us be clear about what is happening, as clear as you were able to be at the time, which was not very. Nothing has been taken. You check. In the morning you check everything, the way you have seen people check in movies, going drawer to drawer, and it is all there. The little cash in the coffee tin, the jewelry that is not worth anything, the spare keys on the hook. The doors are locked from the inside. The alarm, if you have one, has not gone off. The dog, if you have one, has not barked, and has spent the last 6 nights sleeping at the foot of your bed with no more alarm than a dog has about the weather. Nothing has come in that. A lock would stop, and nothing is left that you would miss. Something has been in your kitchen. It opened your window, and it turned your chair, and it set your mail on the floor without bending a corner, and then it did nothing else. And that is the part you cannot hold in your head, that it did nothing else. A person who breaks into a house wants something. A raccoon wants food. A draft wants nowhere. But this stood in your kitchen in the middle of the night and rearranged 3 objects with great care, and then, apparently, left, or did not leave, and either way took nothing. And you cannot fit that into any story you know. So you make a story you can fit it into. You always do. You decide it is the wind and the settling of an old house and your own tiredness inventing patterns. Because you are tired. You have been tired for a long time, and a tired mind is a machine for finding faces in the dark. You resolve to sleep more. You buy a bag of foam weather stripping and you jam it into the window frame so the crank cannot turn. That night the window is shut in the morning, and you feel foolish and relieved, and you sleep. The morning after that, the weather stripping is on the counter, peeled out clean in one long gray curl, and the window is open, and the cold is on the floor, and something in you goes very quiet and does not make a story this time. Here is what you begin to understand over the next week, slowly, the way you understand a thing you do not want to be true. It is not trying to get in. It is already in. The window is not a way through the wall. The window is a habit it has learned about your house, and it opens the window the way you crack a familiar door out of nothing but familiarity, because that is how this house is entered, and it has learned that this is how this house is entered. The open window is not the wound. The open window is the signature, and it is not confined to the kitchen. You notice it in the living room first, because the living room is where you spend your evenings. And so you know the living room the way you know the kitchen, which means you know it without looking, which means it takes a while for your eyes to catch up to what your body has already flinched at. The remote is on the arm of the couch, and you never leave the remote on the arm of the couch. You leave it on the coffee table, always. It is one of those small tyrannies you keep about your own space. The lamp in the corner is turned so its pull chain faces the room instead of the wall. The framed photographs on the shelf have been moved, not much, an inch, so that they all face very slightly toward the doorway, toward the hall, the way the chair faced the hall. And when you crouch down and sight along them, you can see that they have been aimed, that someone has stood where you are standing and adjusted each frame until it pointed at the same dark opening, and you think, with a calm that frightens you more than panic would, it is doing the living room now. That is the shape of it. That is the thing you finally let yourself see. It is going through your house room by room. It finished the kitchen, and the disturbances in the kitchen stopped. The chair stays where you put it now. The window still opens, but the window is only the door it uses, and it has moved on to the living room. And it is doing to the living room what it did to the kitchen, which is learning it, touching everything. Turning everything a few degrees toward the hall, toward the way through, the way a surveyor drives stakes, the way an appraiser walks a property with a clipboard, opening every cabinet, noting every distance. It is taking an inventory. It is learning where your things are, and how your rooms connect, and which way the light falls, and where a person would sit to watch a doorway. And it is doing it with a thoroughness that has nothing personal in it at all. You have to sit with that, the impersonality. You keep wanting it to want something. You keep wanting it to be angry with you, or in love with you, or owed something by the house, or lonely, or hungry, because all of those you could bargain with. All of those have a door you could stand in, but it is not angry, and it is not lonely, and it does not, as far as you can tell, know that you are here in any way that matters to it yet. You are a feature of the house it has not gotten to. You are a room. It is not entered. It is not ignoring you. It has simply not reached you. There is a difference, and you feel the difference every night, lying in the one room it has not learned, listening to it learn the others, because you can hear it now, once you know to listen. Not footsteps. It does not have the courtesy of footsteps, but the house tells on it. A cabinet door in the kitchen closing with the particular soft suck of that one cabinet at 2 a.m. when you are in bed and no one is in the kitchen. The specific creak of the third stair, the one you step over, taken slowly, once, and then not again for an hour. The living room lamp's pull chain ticking against the brass. A small metallic sound, tick, and then tick, as if something is turning the lamp a degree at a time and studying the shadow each degree throws. The house has 100 small sounds that mean you, that mean the furnace or the ice maker or the wind, and now it has a new set of sounds that means something else is using the house the way you use the house, and your body knew the difference before your mind would admit it, which is why you have been waking at 2 and 3 for weeks with your heart going and no reason your mind would give you. You do the things people do. You should get credit for them even though they do not work. You put a chair under the back doorknob, and in the morning, the chair is set neatly aside and the door is locked and the window is open. You leave lights on all night, every light in the house, and in the morning, the bulbs are warm and the living room photographs are aimed an inch further toward the hall. Light is not a thing it minds. Light is just another fact about the room, another measurement, brighter here, dimmer there, and it notes the measurement and moves on. You turn the heat up. Of course you do. You push the thermostat to a number you never use, and you hear the furnace roar on and run and run, and the vents breathe warm air into every room, and the house grows close and dry and warm, the way a house does in the deep of winter, and it changes nothing. The cold still comes. It arrives in whatever room it is learning, and it sits there in the middle of the warm house like a cold spot in a lake in August, a place the warmth simply does not reach, and the furnace runs itself ragged trying to fill a room that is full of something else. And your bill climbs, and the cold does not care, and you turn the heat back down because you cannot afford to fight a thing that was never made of temperature in the first place. You buy a camera, one of the little ones that watches a room and sends the picture to your phone, and you put it in the living room facing the hall, because the hall is where everything points, and you lie in bed and you watch the gray night vision picture of your own living room on a screen the size of a playing card. You want to know what the camera showed. Everyone wants to know what the camera showed. It showed your living room gray and grainy and still for 4 hours, and then at 2004/7 it showed your living room gray and grainy and still, with the temperature reading in the corner of the picture dropping 68, 64, 61, 58, the numbers falling while nothing moved, no shape, no shadow, no figure crossing the frame, only the cold arriving in a room the camera swore was empty, and one of the photographs on the shelf, in the far background, at the edge of the light, turning. You watched it turn. It took most of a minute. There was no hand on it. It rotated on the shelf slowly and evenly, the way the minute hand of a clock moves. Too slow to see moving, and yet undeniably moved, until it faced the hall like the others, and then it stopped, and the temperature held at 57 for 6 minutes, and then began, degree by degree, to climb back up, and by morning the room was warm and ordinary, and the photograph faced the hall, and the camera had recorded 4 hours of an empty room in which one small thing had been true. You did not sleep after that, but you had already stopped sleeping, so it cost you nothing. You were still spending. The cold is the part that finally makes the map for you, if you want to call it a map. The cold moves. It is not a draft, though you spent weeks calling it a draft, because a draft comes from somewhere. A draft has a source you can find with a wet finger, a gap under a door, a socket that hisses when the wind is up. This cold has no source. It arrives in a room and fills it, and then it leaves that room and arrives in another. And if you follow it, and there were nights you followed it, walking your own dark house in your socks with your hand out like a person checking for rain, you can feel it be in the kitchen, and then be in the front hall, and then be on the stairs, moving through the house. Not fast, not slow, moving the way a person moves who is reading every wall as they pass it. And where the cold has been that day is where the small things have turned, and where the cold has not yet been, the house is still only yours. You tested the cold once to be sure it was real, because a person needs to be sure. You took a candle, one of the fat unscented ones you keep in a drawer for when the power goes out, and you lit it and you carried it slow through the downstairs at 2:30, cupping the flame with your hand the way you would outside in a wind, except there was no wind. Every window shut but the one that will not stay shut. Every door closed. In the kitchen, the flame stood straight up, a clean small point of yellow, steady as a painting. In the front hall, it stood straight up. On the stairs, it stood straight up. And in the doorway of the room the cold had come to that night, it leaned. Not toward a window, not toward a gap, not the way a flame leans when there is somewhere for the air to go. It leaned away from the center of the room, back toward you, back toward the door, as if the cold in that room were not air at all, but a weight, a presence taking up the space a body takes, and the little flame bent from it the way grass bends from a foot that has not quite come down. You stood in the doorway holding the leaning candle, and you did not go into the room. And after a moment, you backed out of the doorway, and the flame stood straight up again the instant you crossed the threshold, and you blew it out because your hand had started to shake, and you did not want to see it shake in the light. So you started keeping track. This is very like you, to keep track, to make a list when you are frightened, to turn terror into a chore because a chore is a thing you know how to do. You got a notebook, and you went room to room every morning, and you wrote down what had moved. And after 2 weeks you had, without meaning to make one, a map of its progress through your house. The kitchen was done. You wrote "done" next to the kitchen and you underlined it, and you did not like how it looked underlined, but you left it. The living room was done. The front hall was done. And the front hall was where you first understood what "done" meant, because a finished room feels different. A room it is still learning is restless in the mornings, things an inch off, the cold lingering, the sense when you walk into it that you have interrupted something patient. A room it is finished is settled. Nothing moves in a finished room. The cold does not come back to a finished room. It has taken what it needed from that room. Every distance, every angle, every place a body could stand or sit or hide, and it does not waste itself going over old ground. A finished room is quiet, the way a room is quiet after the movers have carried the last box out, emptied of a purpose you did not know it had been holding. The finished rooms frightened you more than the restless ones. You would rather have it working near you than know it had already worked somewhere and left that place changed and would not need to come back. You had someone over, once, in the middle of all this, because you were coming apart alone and you thought a normal evening might set you back inside your life. A friend, someone who has known you long enough to sit in your kitchen without being offered a seat, and they took the chair, the end chair, the one that had faced the hall, and they turned it out from the wall and sat in it backward with their arms on the back of it and talked to you while you cooked. Comfortable, easy, entirely at home, in the chair, in the room, in a kitchen that had been learned end to end by something that had stood exactly where they were sitting and studied exactly the angle they were now looking down. And they felt nothing. That is what you kept coming back to afterward. They laughed at something and reached over and moved the salt and never once glanced at the hall, never shivered, never trailed off mid-sentence the way you do now, a dozen times a night. And you understood that whatever is in your house is not in the room, the way the cold is in the room. Not for them, not for anyone. It is not haunting a place. It is learning a place. And the place it is learning is yours. And to your friend, the kitchen was only a kitchen, warm and a little cluttered, smelling of dinner, and they went home full and happy and told you to get more sleep. And you locked the door behind them and stood in the kitchen alone and felt the cold come back into it the moment the second person was gone, as if it had only been standing aside, politely, out of the way of the living, waiting for the room to be yours again. The finished rooms frightened you more than the restless ones, and knowing that a stranger could sit in one and feel nothing frightened you most of all, because it meant no one would ever come and find it for you. There would be no proof but the proof you kept. And the proof you kept was a notebook. You watched it work down the map the way you would watch water find the low parts of a floor. The dining room, which you never use, went quickly. 2 nights, because there is little in a dining room to learn. A table, chairs, a sideboard of dishes for a life you do not really live. The downstairs bathroom took 1 night. The coat closet by the front door, it seemed to consider carefully. 3 nights of the door standing an inch ajar in the mornings, and the coats shifted on their hangers. And you understood, looking at the shifted coats, that it was learning the closet as a place a person might be, a place a person might hide or be hidden, and it wanted to know that place well. And then it finished the closet, and the closet went quiet. The basement it did last of the downstairs, and the basement took the longest, and you did not go down while it was working on the basement. You are not ashamed of that. There is a difference between courage and stupidity, and you have always known which side of the line the basement stairs are on at 3 in the morning, but you knew it was down there in the way you know weather, because the cold came up the basement stairs those nights and lay along the kitchen floor like something spilled. And the door at the top of the basement stairs, which you kept shut, which you kept locked after the first week, you would find in the mornings unlocked and standing open onto that square of colder dark, and you would close it and lock it and know that closing it and locking it was a thing you did for yourself and not a thing that did anything, a small ceremony of the living, like straightening a picture at a funeral. You thought the basement was the last of the downstairs. It was not. You had forgotten the garage the way you forget the garage, because it is not quite the house. It is the cold gray box you pass through to the car and never think of as a room. But it is a room, and it has your things in it. The shelves of paint and the bikes on the wall and the second freezer humming in the corner, and it learned the garage too, and you only found out because one morning you opened the car door to leave and every mirror had been turned. The rear view tilted down to show the back seat. Both side mirrors angled in toward the doors. You sat in the driver's seat with the key in your hand and looked at the mirrors all turned to show the ways a person gets into a car, the seats a person sits in, the space behind you, and you understood that it had gone over your car the way it had gone over your rooms. That a car is just a small room you keep in a larger one. That nothing with a door and a distance inside it was beneath its notice. And you fixed the mirrors and drove to work with your hands too tight on the wheel and did not once look in the rear view the whole way there. And then the basement was done, and the garage was done, and the whole downstairs was done. Every room of it settled and quiet and changed. All the small things turned to face the ways through. The house below you learned as completely as a house can be learned, and there was nowhere left for it to go but up. You felt it reach the stairs, the way you feel a change in the weather in an old injury. The upstairs is where you sleep. The upstairs is smaller and closer and more yours. The rooms you keep for yourself and not for company. And you knew, because the cold that had lived along the kitchen floor for a month began, one night, to be found instead in the upstairs hall. You slept downstairs for a while after that, on the couch, in the finished living room, because the living room was done and nothing moved in it. And there was a terrible comfort in that. In bedding down in a room it had already stripped of secrets, a room where it had nothing left to learn and so no reason to come. You slept there for 4 nights, and they were the first 4 nights you had slept, and you understood the trade you were making, that the finished rooms were safe, the way a picked pocket is safe. Safe because there is nothing left to take, and you took the safety anyway because you were so tired and you told yourself you were being clever. And upstairs, above you, night by night, it learned your rooms. The guest room went first, up there, because the guest room is barely yours. It is the room where the boxes go and the exercise machine you do not use hangs its clothes. A room like the dining room. A room with little life in it to catalog. Then the upstairs bath. Then the small room you call the office, which took 3 nights. And you did not like the 3 nights because the office is where your papers are, where the drawers hold the documents of your life, and you thought about what it means for a thing to learn. A room full of everything that says who you are, and then you made yourself stop thinking about it because there is no floor under that thought, only more falling. The office is where you kept the notebook. You should have thought of that. You kept the map of it in the one room left for it to learn. And on the second of the 3 nights you came in to make your morning entry, and the notebook was not where you leave it, squared to the corner of the desk, but turned, the way everything gets turned, laid open, and it was open to your map, to the pages where you had written the rooms and the dates and the word done underlined, and a corner of that page was folded down into a neat crease you had not made, marking the place the way you dog-ear a book you mean to come back to. It did not write in it. It did not need to correct anything. Your record was accurate. It had simply read what you knew about it and marked its place and set the book down. Turned toward the hall, and you stood there holding a notebook that had been read by the thing it was about. And you understood that even your watching, even your keeping track, even this small, brave, stupid ceremony of the list was one more thing in the house it had now taken the measure of and found no reason to be troubled by. And then there was one room left. You know which room. You have known since the kitchen. If you are honest, you have known since the chair turned to face the hall that this is where the map ends. It has done the whole house. It has learned every room but one. And the one it has not learned is the room where you sleep. The room where you are lying now with this in your ears. The room with your bed in it, and your breathing in it, and you in it. The last unlearned room in a house it has otherwise learned by heart. And there is a reason it saved this room for last, and the reason is not mercy. It saved this room for last because you are in it. Every other room it could learn while you slept, because you were not there. Because a room without you in it is a simple thing, a matter of distances and angles and where the light falls. But this room has you in it, and you are the most complicated thing in the house, and it is thorough. And it does not rush the complicated things. It will learn this room the way it learned the others, completely. Every distance and every angle, and where the light falls, and where a body could stand to watch the bed. And this room's inventory includes you, your side of the bed, the sound of your breathing when you are truly asleep, as opposed to only lying still. The exact hour the sleep goes deep, the way you lie and the way you turn, and a small unguarded map of a person who believes, wrongly, that they are alone. It is in the hall now. You do not have to take my word for it. Feel the cold. It is not a draft, the last of the finished rooms lying quiet behind it, and the one unfinished room in front of it with a thin band of dark under the door where your warmth leaks out into the cold it brought. It is not trying the door. It does not need to try the door. It has all of the house but this, and it has learned that this house is entered gently, through openings no one remembers leaving open. And it is in no hurry, not because it is patient with you. It has no feeling toward you at all, but because it is thorough, and a thorough thing arrives exactly when its work brings it, and not one moment before. When it has learned this room, it will start on you. That is what comes after the last room. There is no room after this one. There is only you, the last thing in the house it has not yet turned to face the hall, and it will be as thorough with you as it has been with your kitchen and your closets and your papers. It will learn your distances and your angles and where your light falls and the exact hour you go under, and then it will know you the way it now knows your house, which is to say completely and without warmth, and for a purpose it has never once explained. You could get up and check the window over the kitchen sink. It will be open. You could close it. You know how that goes. So do not get up. Lie still. The cold is under the door, and the house below you is quiet. All of it learned, all of it settled, all of it facing the hall, and the only restless room left in the whole still house is this one, with you awake in it, keeping it restless, keeping it unfinished, for as long as you stay awake. That is the one thing you have. It cannot finish this room while you are watching it. A watched room is a room in use. It cannot take the final inventory of a person who is looking back, so you have stayed up night after night, and that is why you are so tired. That is the real reason, not work, not age, not the long tiredness you named it. You are tired because staying awake is the last lock in a house where the locks were never the thing, and you have been holding it, the way you held the chair against the doorknob, the way you jammed the foam in the window, a small ceremony of the living against the thing that is only, patiently, thoroughly, indifferently, waiting for you to do what everyone does in the end, which is sleep. The cold is on your side of the door now. You will sleep tonight. You know you will. No one stays awake forever, and it has learned that about people. It learned that in some other house before yours, it is the one thing about you. It already knows. You will sleep, and it will come in, gentle as an unremembered window, and it will begin at last on the last room, and it will be quiet, and it will be careful, and it will not wake you, because it does not need to, because it has all the time it needs, and no reason at all to hurry, and in the morning, your room will feel a little different, and you will not know why, and the night after that, a little different still. And one of these mornings, you will stand in your own bedroom and feel the particular settled quiet of a finished room, and you will not recognize the feeling, but your house will. Your house has felt it 11 times now, in 11 rooms, the quiet that comes when there is nothing left to learn. Rest now, if you can. It would rather you did. It works better when you do. And close the window if it makes you feel better. Go on. It will be open again by the time you climb the stairs. Story 6. The dark keeps watch. You reach over and turn off the lamp, and the room fills up. That is the first thing to notice, if you notice anything at all tonight, which you do not have to. The dark does not empty the room. It fills it. The light was the thing that hollowed everything out, that pushed the walls back to arm's length and made the corner stand at attention. Now the light is gone, and the room draws in close and soft around you, the way a blanket settles when you stop fussing with it. The dark moves into every place the lamp had cleared. It comes patient and unhurried until there is no empty space left anywhere at all. You lie back. The pillow takes your head. The dark takes the rest. It is not the flat black of a closed closet, and it is not the gray you would find behind your own shut eyelids. It has a grain to it, this dark, a soft depth, like the inside of a coat pocket, like the space under a porch on a summer afternoon where the day cannot reach. If you hold still and let your eyes stop trying, you will feel it more than see it. It has a weight, not a heavy weight, the weight of a hand laid gently on your shoulder to tell you that you can stop now, that whatever you were carrying can be set down on the floor beside the bed, and it will still be there in the morning if you truly want it back. You probably will not want it back. That is fine too. The dark does not mind either way. Listen to the house for a moment, not to look for anything, just to hear it letting go of the day the same as you are. The furnace ticks somewhere below you as the ducts cool. A small patient clock with no hands. A floorboard settles in the hall. One soft knock, the sound a house makes when it stops holding its shape so carefully and lets its own weight rest. Out past the window, a car goes by, far off, its light sliding once along the ceiling and then gone, and the dark closes back over the ceiling behind it, smoothing the place the light touched, the way water closes over a stone. You feel that, don't you? The smoothing. The dark going over the room after each little disturbance, tucking it back down. There is a name people give to this feeling, though they usually give it in the morning, when it has already left them. They call it peace, or they call it being tired in a good way, or they say the night got quiet at last. They do not often think to wonder why the quiet came, or who kept it. They wake, and the light returns, and they forget that anything was holding the room steady while they slept. That is how it is supposed to be. You are not supposed to know. Most nights, you don't. But you are a little awake right now, in the last thin minutes before you go under, and so you can feel the truth of it, gentle as it is. The dark in your room tonight is not nothing. It is doing something. It is watching over you. Do not sit up. There is nothing to check. You feel the small pull to check, and that is only an old habit from a much younger version of you who was taught that the dark was a place things hid. That version of you needed the light because they had not yet learned to tell the difference between an empty dark and a kept one. You know the difference now, even if you have never had the words for it. An empty dark has an edge to it, a held breath, a sense of something on the far side of the room deciding whether to come closer. This dark has no edge. It has already decided. It decided the moment you turned off the lamp, and what it decided was to stay between you and everything else, all night, and ask nothing in return but that you rest. So rest. The checking can wait for a morning that will bring its own light and make the checking pointless anyway. Feel how it has softened the corners. In the daytime, your room has hard edges, the square meeting of two walls, the sharp lip of the dresser, the straight cold line where the closet door does not quite sit flush in its frame. Those edges are gone now. The dark has come and rounded them all off, the way snow rounds a fence, the way fog rounds the far end of a street. There is not a single hard thing left in the room for your mind to snag on. It has gone around each one and patted it, patient as a nurse folding a corner of a sheet, and now everything your half-open eyes can almost make out is soft and low and near. The dresser is only a warm shape. The chair with the day's clothes on it is only a warmer one. The lamp you turned off is a low, round dark on the nightstand, harmless, resting the way you were resting. Even the ceiling has come down closer, softened out of its daytime flatness into a near warm nothing overhead, so that lying here is less like lying under a room and more like lying inside a cupped hand. Nothing above you is far. Nothing around you is sharp. The dark has been over all of it, and everything it touched went gentle. The doorway to the hall, which in an emptier dark might have worried you, is just a slightly deeper softness in a room made all of soft. Nothing stands in it. Nothing is going to. The dark is seen to that. It stands in the doorway itself, if you want to think of it that way. Though it does not really stand, it simply is there, and there, and there, filling the frame the way it fills everything. So the doorway is not a way in, but a wall, the same as the other walls, and the hall beyond it, and the whole rest of the sleeping house, are held out past the reach of you. You are very safe. It is strange, maybe, to feel this safe. Let it be strange later. For now, be safe. There is only the faintest thread of the strange in it, and you can hold that thread lightly, the way you would hold a loose end of yarn you have decided not to pull tonight. The thread is this: why should the dark care at all? A wall does not care. A locked door does not care. They keep you by being made a certain way, and they would keep a stranger just the same, and they would keep an empty room, and they feel nothing about any of it. But the dark tonight is not like the wall. It is bent toward you. It has taken up your breathing. It has gone around your corners on purpose and stood in your doorway on purpose, and it is minding you, this one warm sleeper, as though you were the reason it came. That is more than a wall does. That is more than the dark needs to do to simply be dark. You could pull that thread, if you wanted, and follow it out past the warm edge of the bed into colder thinking. You could ask what it means that the dark has a preference, and whether a thing that can prefer can also be disappointed, and what the dark might want from all this minding. In the end, if it wants anything. But those are questions with hard edges, and you have no hard edges left tonight, and there is nowhere in this soft room for such questions to stand. So, let the thread lie. Let it be enough that the caring is gentle, and that it has only ever, all your life, tucked you down and never once done you harm. A kindness does not stop being a kindness because you cannot say why it was given. Most of the true ones never can be. So be safe. The thread will still be there in the morning when you will not want it either. Your breathing has slowed. You did not slow it on purpose. You have only stopped rushing it, and left alone, it has found the pace it wants, long and even and low. Notice, if you can, without trying too hard, that the dark is breathing with you, not ahead of you, not behind. With you, when your chest rises, the room seems to loosen just slightly, a give in the air. When your chest falls, the room settles closer, in and out, the two of you keeping time, until it is hard to say where your breath ends and the slow breath of the dark begins, and there is no reason to say, and no one asking. This is how it keeps the watch. By matching you. By going slow so that you can go slow. A frightened breath in a room would set the whole night on edge, and so the dark takes your breathing into its own keeping and smooths it, the way a hand smooths a page, until the fear cannot find a fast enough rhythm to ride in on. You could not be afraid right now if you tried. Try, if you like. You will find there is no purchase for it. The dark has already taken the ledges the fear would need to climb. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe knocks, cools, is quiet. The dark goes over it and folds it down into the general hush. Think about how long the dark has been doing this. Not to keep you awake with the thought, only to feel how old and how practiced the care is, the way you might feel comforted knowing the person driving the long night road has driven it 1,000 times. Every house that has ever had a night has had this. Every child who was ever afraid of the dark was, without knowing it, being held by the very thing they were afraid of, which is the oldest and gentlest joke there is. The dark was never the thing in the room. The dark was the thing, keeping the thing out. It only looked like the danger because it was standing closest to you, between you and the danger. It is the way a large, quiet dog will put its body between a child and the open door and be mistaken by someone who does not understand dogs for the threat. You understand now. A little. Enough to lie still and let yourself be kept. The clock on the nightstand does not glow. You unplugged that one months ago. Or the battery went. Or you turned its face to the wall. and you have never once missed knowing the hour in the middle of the night, because the middle of the night is not a place that has hours. It is a wide, soft country with no signposts, and you are being carried across it, and it does not matter in the least how far along you are or how much is left. The dark is not counting. The dark has all night and wants nothing from any part of it except that you spend it resting. There is no number it is waiting to reach. There is no last hour it is walking toward. It is only here and here and here, the whole width of the dark, keeping the road smooth under you. Feel your feet, warm under the covers. Feel the small heat your own body has made in the bed, the pocket of yourself that the blankets hold. The dark keeps that too. It could let the cold of the room come and press at the edges of your warmth, the way cold likes to do, testing for a way in. It does not let the cold do that tonight. It holds the cold back at the far walls, out past the softened dresser, and lets your warmth be, so that the border of you in the bed stays gentle and undefended, and you do not have to curl in on yourself to keep what heat you have. You can lie open. Nothing is going to take your warmth. The one thing in the room that could have is the one thing choosing instead to guard it. Why does the dark care? You might reach the edge of that question, drifting, and touch it the way a foot touches the cold floor and pulls back. Why? There is no answer that will come tonight, and you do not truly want one. Because the answer is a morning thing, and this is not the morning. Let the question be. It is a small question, and the dark is large, and the dark folds the question down along with the pipe knock and the passing car and the last of the day, and smooths it under, and you feel it go, and you let it. Maybe the dark cares because caring is simply what a thing that fills a room does when there is a sleeper in the room and no reason not to. Maybe it is the same as the way water fills a cup and takes the cup's shape without being asked, so gently you would never call it a favor. Maybe you have been kept every single night of your life, and this is only the first night you happen to be awake enough at the right thin moment to feel the keeping. That is a kind thought. Keep it. If you keep anything, then let it go too, because the dark is asking, softly, in its way that is not words, for you to stop keeping things now and let it do the keeping. All right, you can do that. You have been doing it all your life. Tonight, you just know that you are. The window shows nothing. There is no moon, or the clouds have it, and the streetlight 2 houses down does not reach your glass. So the window is only a slightly different dark set into the wall, a pane of the outside night looking in at the inside night. The two darks are nearly the same, but not. They are the way 2 shades of the same deep color are nearly the same, but not. You watch it without watching it. Nothing crosses it. Nothing is going to. Suppose something out in the wide night were to come toward the house tonight. Some late, unhappy thing that wanders when the house is asleep. It would reach your yard and find the dark of your room already standing full in the window, filling it wall to wall, and it would understand, the way such things understand each other, that this room is spoken for. This one is kept. Go on, not here, not tonight. You did not know you needed to hear that. You hear it anyway, under everything, and something in your shoulders that had been holding since a time you cannot remember lets down at last into the mattress. There. That is better. The dark felt that too, the letting down, and it moved in to fill the space your held shoulders had left, so that even the small hollow of your old tension is padded now and warm. Let me tell you what the dark is not, since your younger self might still be listening at the back of you, the one who wanted the light. The dark is not the shape you thought you saw. There is no shape. The dark does not take shapes, because a shape would have an edge, and the whole gift of the dark tonight is that it has no edges anywhere, that it is all of one soft piece from the ceiling to the floor. The thing you almost saw a moment ago, the deeper place near the closet that seemed for half a breath to lean, was only the dark being thicker there, gathered a little, the way a blanket gathers where a knee bends under it. It was not leaning toward you, it was leaning around you. There is a difference, and your body knows the difference even when your eyes forget, and your body is not afraid. Feel that your body is not afraid. Your heart is slow. Your hands are open. The animal of you, which is honest and cannot be fooled, has decided that this room is safe. And it has decided so because it is true. Trust the animal of you. It has kept you alive this long by knowing the difference between a kept dark and an empty one. And it is telling you, in the only way it can, by unclenching, by slowing, by growing heavy, that tonight you may sleep the whole way down. Consider how much the dark chooses not to do. This is another way to feel the kindness, if you want one more before you go under. The dark could press. It could crowd the bed and lean its whole weight on your chest, the way the old stories say the night sometimes does to a sleeper who wakes and cannot move. It does not do that tonight. It holds its weight off you, all of it, and lets only the softest suggestion of nearness reach you, the way a good nurse checks a sleeping patient without ever waking them. A hand hovering, never landing. The dark has learned the exact distance at which comfort turns to weight, and it stays a hair on the comfort side of that line all night, without slipping once. It could speak too, and it does not. An empty dark is full of almost voices, the house settling into shapes that sound like a word, the furnace breathing out something that could be a sigh with meaning in it. The dark tonight keeps all of that folded flat. It lets the house make its plain wooden sounds and no more. It does not lean any of them towards speech, because a voice in the dark, even a kind one, would be a thing for your mind to catch on and turn over, and it wants your mind smooth tonight, unturning still. So it stays wordless. It keeps its watch, the way the oldest and surest guardians always have, in complete silence, asking nothing, saying nothing, simply being unmovingly there between you and the night. And it could leave. That is the plainest kindness of all and the easiest to forget. The dark is under no vow. Nothing binds it to your small, warm room. It could thin out and drift off to some other house, some other sleeper, and leave your corners to come back sharp and your window to go unminded. It does not leave. It settles in for the whole night the moment you turn off the lamp, and it stays through every hour you will not count, present and patient at the side of a sleeper who will never know it was there. It keeps the watch for its own reasons, or for no reason, and either way it keeps it, and either way you are kept. The house sighs again. A different board this time, farther off, near the stairs. The dark takes it. Think of the neighborhood outside, gone the same soft way your room is gone. The houses down the street have all turned off their lamps by now. One by one, all evening, the windows went dark, the way a string of small fires burns down and settles into coals. And in each of those dark rooms there is a sleeper, and around each sleeper there is a kept dark, minding its own soft corners, holding its own cold at its own far wall. The whole street is being watched over tonight. The whole town. You are one small warm room in a wide field of kept rooms. The dark that fills yours is the same dark that fills all of them. It is one great gentle thing laid over the sleeping, like a hand over a birdcage at night, quieting, covering, keeping. There is something in that you can lean on. You are not the only one being held. You never were. Every window that ever went dark was a room being given over to the keeper, a person setting down the day and letting the dark come in and mind the hours. It is the most ordinary thing in the world. It happens in every house, every night, and no one has to arrange it, and no one has to deserve it. The dark comes when the light goes, the way sleep comes when the day is spent, freely, and asks for nothing, and stays as long as it is needed. You were a child once, in a dark room like this, and someone stood in your doorway and looked in on you before they went to bed. You may not remember it. You were mostly asleep, but you remember the feeling of it somewhere under everything. The feeling of being looked in on by something larger than you that meant you only well. That feeling never went away. It only got quiet. It is here again now, wide and soft in the room, except that the thing looking in on you tonight is the dark itself. And it does not have to go to its own bed, because it has no bed, because it is the bed of the whole night. It will look in on you until morning. You are getting heavier now. This is the good heaviness, the kind that starts in the backs of the legs and rises, the kind that means the day has finally agreed to end. Your legs are stone in the warm way. Your hands have stopped being hands and become just weight at the ends of your arms, resting where they fell. Your jaw, which you did not know you were holding, has come unhung, a little soft. The dark is going over all of it, limb by limb, not touching, only being near, the way warmth is near a banked fire. And everywhere the dark passes, you grow heavier and gladder to be heavy, and less able to remember why anyone would want the light. You will not turn on the light. There is no need. You know this. But it is worth saying softly to yourself, the way you would tell a child a small true thing at the edge of sleep. If you did turn it on, if your hand went out and found the switch and the room jumped back to its hard, bright daytime self, you would only be sending the keeper away. The light would push the dark out to the seams of the room, out under the door, out through the gaps in the blinds. The corners would come back sharp. The far dark of the window would go blank and unminded. The cold would find your warmth, and the watch would be broken. And you would lie there in the bright empty room, unkept, and wonder why you had done it. You would have to wait, blinking, for your eyes to tire. You would have to reach out again and give the room back to the one thing that wanted only to hold it steady for you. So leave the light. Leave your hand where it is, gone soft at the end of your soft arm. The switch will be there in the morning, when the sun makes it useless. Tonight, it is not yours to touch. There is a smell to the room that you like, that you had stopped noticing years ago, the way you stopped hearing your own house. The clean cotton of the pillowcase, the faint old wood of the dresser. Underneath those, the smell of the room itself, which is just the smell of a place where someone has slept safe for a long time. A settled, lived-in, harmless smell, a smell with no fear in it. The dark holds that too. It does not let the sharp smells of the outside night come in, the wet street, the cold metal, the far exhaust. It keeps the room smelling like the inside of your own safe life. Breathe that. It is one of the ways you know you are home, and that home is being watched, and that the watching wishes you nothing but this exact slow sinking you are doing now. In, out, the dark with you. In, out. Feel the sheets against your skin. They have warmed to you now. There was a moment when you first lay down, when they were cool, and your body flinched a little from the cold cotton and then made its peace with it. That moment is long past. The bed is all one temperature now, your temperature, a shallow, warm pool that fits you exactly because you made it, over the slow minutes without trying. The dark keeps the edges of that pool from cooling. It stands the room's chill off at a polite distance, and so the warmth stays gathered close. Your skin has stopped reporting anything at all. No cold, no rough, no seam. There is only the soft, even nothing of being comfortable, which is a thing the body notices only by how completely it has stopped needing to be noticed. That is a gift, to stop being noticed by your own body. All day the body speaks. It is hungry, it is stiff, it is too warm, its shoulder aches, its eyes are dry. All day you answer it or fail to, and either way, it keeps a running tally of small complaints. Now, in the kept dark, the tally has gone quiet. The body has laid down its list. There is nothing it needs from you tonight, nothing it wants you to fix, and so it has fallen silent. And in the silence it grows heavier and warmer and further away. It is less a thing you are now and more a thing you are resting inside, like a warm boat you have climbed down into to sleep while it carries you. The dark is the water under the boat. It is very deep and very calm, and it holds you up without effort, the way deep water always holds more than you would think. You could not sink through it if you tried. It is made to bear exactly your weight, and the weight of every sleeper, and it does not tire, and it does not thin, and it does not let go in the night when your grip loosens, because it was never your grip that was holding you. It was always the dark. You only thought you were holding on. Tonight, you can feel that you were never the one doing the holding, and you can let your hands go soft and drift. In, out, the dark with you. In, out. Think, gently, of all the small kept things in a house at night that no one thanks. The way the walls hold the warm in, the way the roof holds the weather off, the way the locked door holds the street out. These are all just the dark's daytime cousins, doing in their solid, patient way what the dark does in its soft one, standing between the sleeper and the wide cold. Everything. Asking nothing. You live inside a nested set of gentle guardians, wall, inside dark, and at the very center of all of them is you, held like the last small warm thing in a folded set of hands. You have always lived there. Tonight you can feel the hands. That is the only difference. Tonight, for once, you can feel how held you have always been. That could make a person want to weep, in the good way, at the edge of sleep, and if it does, let it. The dark will keep the tears too. It keeps everything soft that comes to it, but you are probably past weeping now, gone too heavy, too far down the slow slope, and the feeling instead just spreads out flat and warm across your chest like sun on a floor, and stays there, and is enough. Your thoughts are slowing. You can hear them slowing, the way you can hear a record slow when the power cuts, the words in your head stretching long and low and losing their shapes. You were thinking something a moment ago, and now you cannot find it, and you do not look for it, because looking would mean climbing back up toward waking, and you have no wish to climb. The dark is at the top of the slope behind you, not pushing, only being there, so that there is nowhere to go but down and down into the wide, soft country. And it is easy. It is the easiest thing. It is the thing your whole tired body has wanted since noon. Down, a little more. The dark keeps the road. Notice how time has gone soft along with everything else. You cannot say how long you have been lying here. It might be minutes. It might be an hour. The question has no weight and no answer, and asking it barely disturbs the surface of you before it sinks. In the daytime, you are always somewhere on a line, this hour and then the next, a morning that becomes an afternoon that owes something to an evening. Here, there is no line. The dark does not run in a line. It pools. You are lying in the deepest part of the pool now, where the day cannot reach, and the morning has not yet begun to lighten the far shallow edge. And there is nothing to do here but be, and sink, and be. If you surface for a moment, drifting up the way sleepers do, you will find the dark still there, unchanged, as though no time had passed at all, because for the dark, no time has passed. It does not wait the way you wait. It does not feel the hours drag or hurry. It is simply present across the whole width of the night, the same at what would be 2 as it is at what would be 4, evenly kept, evenly warm. So whenever you rise a little toward waking and then let go again, you let go into exactly the same soft keeping you left. There are no seams in the night for you to catch on. The dark has smoothed even those. You may come up and go down as often as you like, and each time the room will be there, held and waiting, and it will take you back without a word. So go back down. There is nothing up here for you tonight. Everything you need is at the bottom of the pool, in the deep, still warm, and the dark is the whole pool. And it wants you to have the deepest rest there is. Down. A little more. The dark keeps the road. You might notice, far off and unbothered, that you cannot quite feel the boundary of yourself anymore. Where the bed ends and you begin has gone vague. Where you end and the dark begins has gone vague. This is not a loss. This is the keeping doing its finest work, the softening turned all the way up, until even the last hard edge, which was the edge of you, has been gone around and patted and folded down. You are spreading out a little into the kept room, and the kept room is settling a little into you, and there is no harm in it anywhere. Only the enormous ease of not having to hold your own shape for a while. The dark will hold it for you. It has your shape now, tucked safe, and it will give it back at dawn, whole, warm, yours, the way a coat is given back at the end of a long good evening. You do not have to stay for the end of this. That is the last kindness and the truest one. There is no end to stay for. Nothing is going to happen. No hour is going to strike. No shape is going to finish crossing the room. No held breath is going to be let out at last. That is what an empty dark is for, the striking and the crossing and the letting out. And this is not an empty dark. This is the other kind. This is the kind where the whole long night is just this: the slow keeping, the soft-filled room, the two breaths gone to one. From now until a morning, you do not need to be awake to reach. So do not wait up. Do not listen for the end. There is only the middle, wide and warm, and yours. The dark is all around and under and over you, keeping the watch it has always kept. It asks nothing. It minds the corners and holds the cold at the far wall, and folds down each small sound the house makes as the house lets go of its day, the way you are letting go of yours. The furnace ticks and is folded down. A last car passes far away, and its light does not even reach the ceiling this time, and the dark barely has to smooth anything at all, so little is left to disturb. The window holds its patient nothing. The doorway is a wall. The room is full and soft and near and kept. Rest now. You do not have to do anything else tonight. You do not have to keep yourself. Something older and kinder than you has that, and has always had it, and is glad to. Let your slow breath be the last thing you notice, and then let even that go. Let the dart carry it for you, in and out, in and out. It will carry it all night, whether you feel it or not. It will carry it long after the last of you has gone down soft into the wide, warm country, where nothing is waiting and nothing is coming, and there is only this. There is one more small thing to let go of, and then you can let go of the letting go. It is the idea that any of this needs understanding to keep being true. It does not. The dark kept you long before you had a single word for it, when you were too small to think at all, and it will keep you long after tonight's few thoughts have dissolved into sleep and been forgotten. The keeping does not need you to follow it. It does not need your thanks or your wonder or your worry over why. It only needs you to lie here and be kept, which is the one thing you are already doing, the one thing you cannot help doing, the easiest thing in the whole soft world. So stop understanding now. The last of the thoughts go loose and drift, the way the last leaves go off a branch and no wind at all, just letting go because it is time. The dark, your worries, your wonderings, the small bright day still flickering somewhere at the back of you, all of it drifts down into the deep warm keeping and is smoothed and stilled and held. The dark is kind tonight. The dark is kind every night. Tonight you simply got to feel it for a moment before you went to sleep. Sleep now. The dark keeps the watch. Rest. There is nothing to check. There is only the keeping, and the keeping does not stop. And you are held, and you are warm, and you are home, and the night is long and soft and entirely on your side. Go on down. It has you. It has always had you. Rest now.